1,000.
The full package.
Okay, so there's espresso machines you can buy like kind of like a barista style. It has all in one. So you have the espresso maker. Sometimes it comes with a grinder, sometimes and also the steam one. But those components you can get separately. Like there's manual espressos machines where you use a lever to pull your shot. There's stovetop steamers where I think they're better than the like say $500 to $1,000 range espresso machine because they're generally those steam ones they don't heat up as fast and you don't get a consistent steam. So I was talking to my girlfriend because she wants to get into making latte art, and I'm thinking like it would be better.
Latte art, like just fucking making the drawings in the coffee.
Yeah, but you need the steam milk. You can't just use regular milk. You need
Yeah.
Okay.
So there are like
so she doesn't want to. She's primarily wanting to make the art, and then secondarily just drinking it.
No, she likes latte. I myself like to drink black. So espresso is a coffee world that I haven't explored. So when I was looking into enthusiasts who are into coffee, the one advice I was told is do not buy an espresso machine if you just want to make coffee. You only buy it if you want to be a hobbyist because to make an espresso, it's a lot of work and it's like a lot of work for just a cup of coffee, I guess. So if you just want to get a cup of Joe, this is not the machine for you. But if you want to take the time to learn how to make coffee and spend thousands of dollars, then it'd be a hobby to get into. Kind of like luxury watches, where we talk about the issues of when you get into the hobby, all the different items you need to buy. Because like for coffee, the number one thing is you need a good grinder because the grinder determines how good your coffee is. So it doesn't matter how expensive your espresso machine is. If your grinder's not good, then you're not going to get a good pull. And especially for espresso, you need to get a special type of grinder because it needs to be very fine compared to, say, a filter coffee. So filter coffee are like your French press, your pour overs, like those are very coarse. But for espresso, you need a very fine grind to get a consistent pull. And you can tell I've been looking into it because I'm using these enthusiast terminology, what they call.
Sounds like you're doing a presentation for espresso right now to a bunch of shit-eating investors.
So when I was working in my office, we had a Jura machine, Jura. It was like about, I think my boss owned was like $10,000. And it made really good coffee because it had crema. So crema is the white foam that you get from coffee beans, from the oil. And you only get this from espresso machines or espresso quality machines. So for filter coffee, you don't get that crema. And it's like kind of nice. It's like this silky bit that you can mix with your coffee. Anyways, with the coronavirus working at home, I don't have that option. So it's like a world I miss that crema type of coffee.
You missed the crema.
I do, yeah. Like you go to Starbucks. Like, what do you order, Vincent?
I don't order dick all.
Or you just order the tea or the passion fruit?
Fuck. If I, like every time I order from Starbucks, it would be a depressing event because you would order and then I would be like, why am I spending so much money for such a drink, for coffee? And then
because it's expensive. The whole method.
And then it just ruins my mood, anyways. So yeah, I just get whatever novelty that they have to sell to me for us to consume.
Yeah,
just enough. Whatever slop they put in the pig trough. Yeah, I just get that, and then it's usually something that's probably bad for my health. Probably adds to cholesterol. Probably shortens my lifespan. Probably is loaded with sugar. It's usually just a drink that is just it's just all sugar with a little bit of like a splash of water. And then and then everything is just regret.
I feel like you just treat it like a boba, like a milk tea kind of thing.
Bubble tea is also expensive and stupid expensive, but I don't know. I guess we drink that a little bit more because at least you can chew on something.
See, bubble tea, I feel like you need hobbyist bubble tea makers, like to the point of coffee makers, where they have like special pearls that they have to handcraft themselves individually,
You
and
feel like
like
you
charge
we should
you.
have more. So every cup of bubble tea at that point will cost like what, $50 for a pop?
They kind of do have that though, with like the I don't know what they're called, but it's the dessert with all the taro, like different taros and yams, and you know what I'm
Yeah,
talking about?
Shaved
they have
ice. Is
they're
that
not
shaved
bubble
ice?
teas, but yeah, they're just desserts. They have
Oh,
all
like
kinds of
parfait,
desserts.
like a parfait.
They have all kinds of, well, I don't know what the fuck you would classify them as, but it's all Asian dessert places will be
You
like
think
shaved
it
ice,
would be a hit
fruit
to make
bowls.
like a artisan bubble tea shop where you have like it's more of a dine-in atmosphere and you have like special pearls and like coffee and teas that
I don't
you
know,
know.
motherfuckers like you would go in there every day, so I imagine it'd be pretty successful.
But I don't. The whole idea of getting espresso is so that you can make it at home, so you don't need
Ah,
to
I
go
see.
out. Yeah,
Okay, then the artisan bubble tea place will sink. It will be a disaster
but
then.
people don't make artisan bubble tea at home, right?
Okay,
Yeah,
so then it'll be a success then because you'll go over there to drink it. Eventually, you'll have to be. It'll be like approaching prices of like crack or something, and then you have to
Well, it's
decide.
kind of like once you make artisan bubble tea, then you could like move into artisan snow caps, like
I
you know.
fucking I just hate artisan everything. I like artisan to me is just a fancy word to slap on like an extra zero to the price.
Oh yeah, for
That's
sure.
what artisan is like for me. I'd rather just get my slop given to me in a formless shape, no, shapeless form. Either way, just
Hmm.
as long as it's delicious
I bet
slop.
I bet if you were rich, you would start getting into artisan stuff. Like
Yeah, but
say coffee. Like right now you're not into coffee, but I bet if you had a lot of money and you didn't work, you would spend the time to grind your coffee and make your own espressos
yeah,
just because you had them.
rich people function differently anyways. They'll, start to buy like artisan slaves, artisan human meat, artisan uh torture chambers, I guess. Why wouldn't you? People buy fucking dungeons and fucking castles if they have the money.
Yeah.
Your all of your tastes would change anyways. I don't think I don't even think they'd be doing your little coffee experiments after that. You know what they'll do? They'll buy the beans from like, okay, they'll get like specifically they'll start to hunt for those like really rare like coffee beans. Like coffee beans that like grown with like fucking in the sweat of like 72 infants or some shit like that.
Well,
Yeah, and then
actually,
every bean's
expensive
like 10
coffee.
grand.
I think there's this like worm or something that poops out coffee beans or something like that, and those are like the super expensive coffee beans. Where like
There's one that is like cat shit, I think. It's just like I think it's like a cat or some sort of creature. It may not even be a feline,
right,
but it's just like, or even if it was a bird or something. They eat the fucking
some
beans, they shit it out, and that's your coffee. That's what they like. The artisanal shit coffee beans lovers.
but I think having a nice cup of Joe is nice. Like going to a cafe shop and just like ordering a cup of Joe and chatting with your friends or meeting with people. It's a fun experience.
Yeah, no shit. It's just like having a drink while with your friends, but
Hmm.
coffee. Yeah, it's a thing. That's why cafes are a thing. It
The
wouldn't
other
be
thing
here if
I
people didn't like it.
the other thing I like about espresso is you can put it on ice cream and you got affogato
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
and that stuff
Yeah,
is
my
good.
wife likes that shit a lot.
Yeah.
Christine, so
Anyways, let's start the show. Hi everybody. It's we're back for another episode. It's me, Sinzin. And we got Bmoney and we got Phil here with us as well. Hey guys, what's up? Hey,
Doing good, doing good.
Phil's dying because he just got the vaccine, and he's dead. He is close to death.
yep, they're out
did
to get me. It's
did
all
you
it's all governed
did
by.
you get a
Is
selection?
is it? You think it's the vaccine doing its job, or is this the microchip is just running hot?
It's hard to say. Maybe it's a malfunction.
Yeah.
I remember reading
You
something
and your
about
wife.
like.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I remember reading something where if you got vaccine on your say your arm, but then it got amputated, does the vaccine like stop?
I think you. Why? It's like what? You get amputated right after you get the vaccine?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Like what
fuck, I don't
happened?
know. I
Because your
don't
arm
know.
just has the vaccine, but your body doesn't. I remember there was
I don't know
something
how
about this
fast. I don't know how fast it goes through. I imagine.
into
I
your
thought it'd be
bloodstream.
fast. I thought it'd be fast. So I think
So
you'd
you think
already
it'd
have
be
it.
fine?
I don't
Oh,
think it
okay.
just pulls up in your arm and then slowly fucking like drips into the rest of your body. You
Yeah,
know?
I thought it would be like a diffusion thing. Takes time for it to
No, it's
travel.
not like a tea bag. I think it just goes straight in your bloodstream.
It's like I think it would be like it to you. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
No, dude, yeah, like it goes into your vein, and then the veins take it to your heart, and your heart just jets it everywhere else, right? So I
Just
think,
into your body. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it doesn't just pull. You gotta wait for the fucking diffusion of. You have to sit there stewing. I don't think it works like that. That would suck. But you know what? If it did work like that, we'd have a lot more other methods, right? Like after you get your vaccine, if your body was like that, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, like fucking lie sideways for the next 30 minutes or something, or
Or
spin
maybe
around." Yeah, spin around real fast for like 5 minutes.
they put you on a
Jiggle
roller
around.
coaster ride.
Yeah, you have to jiggle around. You gotta like, yeah, you gotta put on. You gotta get into a centrifuge. That's to spin you out. You know.
Yeah. Maybe that's what the ride was designed for. It was just a human centrifuge just to distribute the vaccine.
What?
Fuck. I don't know.
Anyway, sorry. Just an odd thought in my head.
Did you?
Not
Were you done with the coffee thing, or did you want to
I just wanted to point out that, like, to be a
horn it out?
hobbyist in coffee, there's like a lot of equipment you have to buy. So,
Horn it out.
grinder's one, the most expensive one. Then you have to start buying like a scale, because then
Mhm.
to one of the things about coffee makers, they want consistency. So you need to always measure your beans to get the exact amount to make sure you get a consistent pull.
Yeah, before
It,
you continue on with your presentation, how did you get into this? You just got into this like this week or some shit like that, didn't you?
yeah, I mean, my girlfriend was wanting to get into latte art and make lattes, right? So, she's been making like London fogs, matcha lattes that are pretty good. We bought like a $25 frother for milk, so you can use this on like cold milk and stuff. It's fairly affordable, but like for like steam milk, it's not like an affordable thing. Like you generally can get a steam one from like an espresso machine, which generally costs around $700 is generally the beginner entry level price. You can get a separate like stovetop steamer that's like about $250. So like these things are pricey just to get into the hobbyist part of coffee making.
Okay, is it really that expensive? We got like a second-hand espresso machine and it came with this. Oh no, it didn't come with a steamer. Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe you're right.
Yep, we bought the whole set. Like you're gonna get the tamper and like the thing that evenly distributes the coffee. I don't know. I don't know any of the
Oh, like
terms.
the puck, or
Yeah.
so you have
Man,
the
so how
basket.
did you get into it then? Yeah, I get your girlfriend was really into making lattes, and then you also just dive headfirst in as well.
Well, if we were getting into if we were to purchase like espresso machine, I would like to know what we're kind of purchasing and try to research it, and then by researching, you just kind of delve into the hobbyist, right? And then people will start telling you what are the things they look
I feel
for
like
in a coffee
I
and
feel
stuff
like you're just like you're so easily influenced. Or it sounds like as long like she bought like an espresso machine and then you're like, oh, I should find out what it is, and now you're like an espresso head. So I mean, like, I wonder, like, if I got you like Mein Kampf for like Christmas, like Hitler's book, I wonder if you just like turn out to be like after like a week of reading, you'd be like a hardcore fascist coming out.
I'm not sure how my mind works. I'm not sure what things I latch onto and what things I don't like.
Just a
Uh,
sponge.
I got into like rock climbing and then started learning about like the different like toe grips and like shoes and things like that. I looked into like juggling a bit and the whole concept of juggling and
Fucking
different
juggling.
forms of juggling. So that was interesting.
There's like
Yeah,
there's technically there's like technical juggling masters out there.
yeah. I mean, juggling. There's a lot of different forms. There's you have the traditional one where you throw things in the air, but there's ones where like more creative ones is like you juggle with the floor, like you bounce balls off the floor, or there's ones with sand where you
So
toss
the
the
top
ball and
jugglers. So
yeah.
the top jugglers, and can they just make a living being professional jugglers, or is this pretty much
I think
always just
I
a
think in the
side gig?
I think in the TikTok world there are because there's this one TikToker, I think his name is Dylan, and he does ice cream. He works at an ice cream parlor and he just has a point of view showing how he tosses ice cream and make ice cream. Just like and
Wait,
the
so
regular
he's
ice cream
not.
shops like
So he that guy has to do a fucking side gig. He works at an ice cream shop.
well his main gig now is that ice cream parlors invites him over to make ice cream at their store, I guess. That and that's how they attract customers. I guess these kids follow this guy, and whenever he comes to like a new store, I guess they get a lot of customers, and then he'll just film, just making quick TikTok videos of him making ice cream and
Jesus.
just talking about like life and stuff, or just like inventive ways of making different flavors or something like that.
Okay? So have you ever gotten into something that you had to read up on it and then you just didn't like it? You just were like, oh fuck it. You didn't get suckered into it. It didn't like just pull you into its this world of this new hobby or whatever. You ever
Uh,
or is it just
hmm.
everything that you've ever had to read up on, you just get completely taken over by it?
I guess can't. Well, I think that's the challenge. Is most of the things I read up on are things I'm interested in. So generally, I would get sucked into it for some time. But I think like K-pop, I think Blackpink, I was really into them for a bit. I don't know why, but for some reason, my mind latched onto them for a bit. So I was like a Blackpink fan for a bit, and then now I'm not too interested in them.
Okay,
Like,
but it does sound like, yeah, it sounds like you just get sucked in no matter what it is. So I mean, like, if all of a sudden you got to read up on like fucking scat porn and shit, are you gonna? I imagine you're gonna start getting into it.
well,
You're
I think it's all about interest though. Like if
you're gonna start
I had to
tasting
have
your own
a
shit to see what the
I would
craze is all
I would
about.
need a genuine interest in it first, right?
I don't think it works
So
like that. You didn't. You said that you just started liking Blackpink. What was it? You had like an interest in it
yeah,
before.
I may have listened. Well, maybe their songs are catchy, I think.
Ah, okay.
And I mean, with K-pop, they are designed to get people's attention. So
I see. So then you heard their song. It was
yeah,
you thought it sounded good, and then you started doing like 18 hours a day of research on them after that.
yeah, or just listening to song on repeat. Like that's the thing I have a problem with. Like if I like a song, then I'll listen to the same song on repeat for until I get sick of it. Like, do you guys do that? Like when I like a song a lot, I just listen to it
Oh
two times.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I generally do not listen or watch movies over.
Phil only listens to everything once. That's it.
like
After that, it's done. He'll never listen to this again.
Well, if I
like.
just
Mhm.
if I just heard it, I'm not going. It's not likely that I'm going to play it again.
Do you not have earworm where like a song gets stuck in your head? Do you ever get that?
A song gets stuck in my head.
Yeah, like a song it's stuck in your
Sure.
head and you just can't help but
Yeah.
like to tune it and then yeah, that's part of earworms. I think the best way to get it out is just to keep listening to the song until your brain gets desensitized by the song.
Hmm.
You just like to abuse yourself. It does sound like you're abusing yourself.
Well, there's a movie
Oh,
called Lock, Locke, and it's about a guy who drives a BMW and he talks on the phone. And he talks to various people like his wife, a lady he got pregnant, his boss, his kids, stuff like that, right? And that movie I really enjoyed, and then I just realized, oh, I could just take the audio recording of the movie and just play in my car, and then I could embody the character by driving my car while listening to the movie. That's pretty good. I did that like a couple of times.
Everything
got
just
immersed
seems
in the movie.
off. Everything just seems off. You know how they talk about like it's either in scenes in the movies where about like serial killers or some shit like that, or is it people are like, yeah, he's a really nice guy. It's just something seemed off about it. Everything always seems off about you. Thank God you're using all those energies to like fucking look at coffee makers instead of like like murdering people in the night. I suppose I'm very thankful for that. Although I imagine that based on what you just told me this episode, as soon as you start reading into serial killers, I don't know what's gonna happen. You can try your hand out. Fucking the Bmoney, the Bmoney killer. You would be terrible as a serial killer.
I would think the best way to do it is be a cop first, because like right now they're doing the case for what's his name? The guy who killed George Floyd. Like they're doing the
Derek Chauvin,
right? Like they're doing they're doing the trial for him right now, right? And so being a police gives you a lot of alibis, right? Because you can always say like what you're doing is part of your training, or that you were threatened, or like there's a lot of things that seems like in the police they have these protective measures for you. So it would make sense.
Yeah,
That
some of them.
First step is to
There are some people that are just fucking like power hungry people, I guess, that just want to abuse authority. Totally, a ton of them join the police. A ton of them go into the military as well.
Yeah, it was crazy too, because like during Derek's thing, not too long ago, that a woman shot a black kid, like a 20-year-old black kid. She was like a white woman. I can't remember her name, but in the body cam you could hear her say taser, taser, and she just grabs the gun and shoots.
Oh, that's the recent one. It was
That's
like
the recent one,
right.
yeah.
There's like it wasn't that even far from where George Floyd died. That's why they're
Yeah,
they're rioting right now.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not too long. Yeah, the riots never stop.
Yeah,
It's like not even been a year yet.
no, yeah, it was like on the anniversary they just did it. They did it again just to commemorate the anniversry. They shot another black guy to death. So
And
they never stop. It's just gonna keep on going. Whatever. It's just gonna be a yearly thing in Minneapolis.
And then in Virginia, they had a black veteran who gets like pepper sprayed by these two white police while he was in a gas station or something. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But there's a recent movie on Netflix called Two Distant Stranger. Have you guys seen it? It's like a short. It's a 30-minute short, and it's basically Groundhog's Day movie about a black kid who tries to leave an apartment to see his dog. Like he was trying to go home to see his dog, and basically he's getting stopped by a white cop.
Wait, hold on.
He keeps getting murdered.
Before we get into, what do you mean he's leaving his apartment to see his dog? His dog doesn't live with him?
He slept at a girl's apartment. Like,
okay.
Yeah, and then so he woke up from that apartment, and then he got dressed, went, and he has to go see his dog, right? Because they left him overnight. And every time he leaves that apartment, he gets murdered by a white police, and it just keeps happening throughout the movie. It's like a 30-minute short, and it's like a Groundhog's Day. So every time he dies,
is it the same cop that kills him every time, or is it a different cop?
Generally it's the same cop, but sometimes other cops kills him.
But it's always death by police, right? It's not anything like he steps. I see.
Yeah,
it's not anything else like gets hit by a car or anything accidentally. It's always death by police.
Well, they did those quick montage to show that like he died a lot of times. So there may be other incidental, but generally it's like the white police is trying to kill him kind of thing.
So it was making like a commentary, or it just wanted to be?
I think it was
like
making
a really short Groundhog's Day
commentary. I think it was making a commentary because at the end of the movie it started having the names of the that movement of say their names.
Yeah.
It's like the victims of the people who got murdered by police. It had those names show up. So And it was nominated for an Oscar, which I feel like part of winning the Oscar, you always need to have some race card. Because
Well,
like,
it's just whatever's like in right now, right? Like
yeah,
in
because Green Book
culturally,
won,
like
right? In
yeah.
Yeah, so Green Book won in 2018. It was also about the race. It was a
Mhm.
race theme kind of movie. It was very light though.
I saw it. Yeah, I saw it. It was not bad. It's a light. It's like it's supposed to deal some like it's some like racial issues, but the ending was quite lighthearted and stuff. So like the
The whole
movie was
movie is
trending.
very lighthearted. Like
Well,
they had race
it's
issue, but it
it's
wasn't
like
like
between Viggo Mortensen and the fuck I forget the
the
actor's name.
yeah.
Yeah,
Marshala Ali.
yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I forget his name, but yeah, it was not bad. It's a. I felt like it was
Mhm.
like a light movie.
Yeah,
It was
definitely.
enjoyable.
I think it's a very good feel good white guy movie. Like if you were a white, you would feel good about that. Like, oh
Yeah,
yeah,
just be like, hey, this guy, he was the Italian guy. He was good. He was good to the blacks, so I feel good too. You know?
exactly.
Don't gotta worry. Don't gotta worry about another black guy who just got murdered.
I totally feel like that's why I won the Oscar because people who voted for it like, yeah, I feel good voting for this movie.
I feel, yeah, I think it makes them feel good about themselves.
Yeah, they're
I
gonna
feel
feel.
like, yeah, I feel like they're I don't know, they're just like flooding it with all of this too. Like not that long ago, even all like the clothing brands and the NBA and all of that was also like making like showing support for like Black Lives Matter and all that stuff, right? And then
Yeah,
I feel like uh well, first of all, I think it's all bullshit. The companies, they don't really give a shit anyways, right? Like they don't
they're
care.
just using it for
They're
marketing.
just yeah, they're just using it for marketing. And
Yeah.
I feel like at some point, like if I feel like they kind of like saturating the whole like space too. I mean, like like movies and ads and stuff and whatever. I just
Mhm.
feel like it might work against them because if you just have it every day, like if you were like
Oh,
one of
you'd
the
be desensitized by the
well,
message.
I think so. Yeah, you know what? Yes, that's probably the best way of putting it. I think this it's getting to a point. Well, maybe it's not getting to a point, but too much of it can be desensitizing. So I
Yeah.
feel like that's not a good thing to get
Well,
everybody like
how do
desensitized
you feel
from.
about Me Too? Because that was before Black Lives Matter. Me Too movement was the thing, right?
I think, well, yeah, and I think Me Too is kind of like dying down a little bit too, because I don't know, because it's just everybody. It just at some point maybe it just becomes too much. But like I don't know,
Hmm.
like for people that did get fucked, like because of those things, and and they became Me Too became a thing because fucking real people were getting like really, like they were facing this fucking terrible situation of like fucking rape and but I just feel like a crowd gets in on that and then they just start to do like a fucking crusade on
Hmm.
everything and it just kind of gets out of control. But and yeah, I
Hmm.
guess it desensitizes you as well.
Hmm.
But I don't think like companies and shit and like ads and fucking movies played a lot of like the fucking Me Too themed ones, right? But they are doing it with a lot of like
Mm.
the Black
Well,
Lives
there's
Matter
always
stuff.
movies, even before BLM. I mean, there were always movies about Black Lives Matter, or they're always talking about it, right? Like there's 12 Years a Slave, there's Django, and like Unchained.
Hmm.
There's always gonna be that theme is always
Oh
gonna
yeah,
be
because
there.
they can't
Uh,
fucking deal with it. So yeah, it's always gonna be.
I mean,
It's
sometimes
literally a
they
part
even
of it.
make
It's
they
literally a
make
part of that country and other
yeah, like
countries too.
yeah, exactly. It's a theme that is commonly shared and commonly recognized. So it's an easy theme to use. Like people understand it. Like a movie like Tenet can never win anything because people can't relate. How do you travel in time inverted, right? Like people won't understand that. But like people understand racism, or not maybe not understand, but people understand the feeling of it or that type of idea. So it's a more simpler idea.
I feel like there's going to be like a counter. I think there already is, obviously, with like Blue Lives Matter and All Lives Matter and all that stuff. Feel like there's going to be a counter current even in the cultural space, like the art space itself. I feel like there's going to be like comedians or movies or shows that will that'll come out that'll be like kind of like pushing back against it. I feel like that's how like the pendulum swings.
So
And
recently,
I know, like,
mm-hmm.
and well, just like if it's just like focused on that space, like just fucking art for the sake of art or culture for the sake of culture, I just feel like everybody's missing like the forest for the trees. Like everybody's gonna be fucking missing the point, right? Because then you'll start to have people like fighting over these stupid spaces, in art, movies, and shit. That it doesn't really matter, right? Like, and then it'll just become, like that will become like the struggling ground, the fighting ground for this kind of stuff. But well, yeah. I just think that it's just me saying bullshit.
I heard currently in Discord there's a black people Discord and a white people Discord as a protest to the black people Discord. Whereas like you need to be black to join this Discord.
Yeah, okay.
And you have to have a photo proof of yourself, and you have to have someone to verify that you're black, kind of thing. And, so it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, right. So I mean, that's like fucking taking it pretty far, right?
Well, I wonder if that's against a policy or Discord's policy at all, or it's kind of like the whole Parler thing, right? With like conservatives joining together and talking about racist or not racist thing. Well, I guess racist thing, yeah.
Probably,
and like
a lot of them were. Yeah.
So I wonder if Discord's gonna have to like intervene with this.
I mean, if you're just fucking blocking, if you're asking for, I don't know. Well, you know what? Like some Discords are like that. They kind of like have like a test, like an admissions test, to see if they will admit you. So I mean, like a lot of fucking Discords already do that. A lot of servers already do that for whatever.
You could think of it like a Facebook group page almost too.
It is. So I don't think they're gonna fucking. It's not something that's too crazy out of the loop. But I mean, like you gotta send your ID.
It depends on what they talk about, because like some Facebook group like pages, like say anti-vaxxers, like does get shut down because they become a public health risk or something like that. So
well, it's also it's not just because of public, because it's this is the political zeitgeist right now, right? Like anti-vaccine, like being against the vaccine, being against it. It's very it's obviously a health thing, and also people are realizing that you probably do need to censor some of these the more crazier voices, because they are like having a lot of followers. So it is a political action as well.
All right, well, let's get to the meat of the topic, unless anyone else has anything to add.
I imagine Phil would, if he wasn't going to die, if he doesn't feel like dying right now.
Yeah. What do you want to? What's the meat of meat?
All right, the meat of the topic. Well, Sinzin, you recently watched Seaspiracy.
Yes, I did watch Seaspiracy, Netflix documentary.
And I also watched Seaspiracy. And before I watched Seaspiracy, you had mentioned in our group chat that the message of the movie is don't eat fish.
And fuckers are telling us not to eat fish. Yep.
And at first I thought that was a weird message, and then because like I looked at the preview and
but then you watched it. Then you watched it, and now you're hardcore into it. You have become.
And I'm like, oh, that's what he meant. Don't eat fish. All right. So Seaspiracy, what is it about? The movie, I think, had a really weak beginning because it's like talking about like, oh, I'm an environmentalist. I want to save the ocean, collecting plastic off a beach.
Yeah.
And then he's like deep dives into it, and then he starts finding all these conspiracy about the fish market or the fishing industry, and starts finding like all the issue about regulation. and then goes into a deep dive and discovers that the solution to all the woes in the sea is to not eat fish. That was
It's
the
all a
conclusion.
seaspiracy, folks.
Yeah. Actually, the first comment, or the number one comment when you look at reviews for seaspiracy is, why didn't they stick with conspiracy? Because they had the word sea in it. Like, that was the number one comment usually.
Fuck.
Anyways, seaspiracy. I think the thing that I didn't know about until I started doing a deep dive is it's basically vegan propaganda.
Yeah.
Because the people who made it were vegans.
Yeah.
All the interviewers that they interviewed were vegans.
Pushing that damn vegan agenda.
But here's the issue. The biggest issue is they didn't interview any scientists, like marine scientists. They interviewed like government bodies and stuff, but they never talked about any marine scientists who actually know the issue, who actually study the issue. And
basically they just wanted to they already had a fucking premise. They already had a conclusion, and they're just trying to find shit to fit the conclusion in the end.
Exactly. So some things you'll see in the movie I found that's really disturbing is graphs. They show a lot of graphs. Here's the issue. They don't have any numbers on the x-axis or the y-axis. It's just a chart with a line going from top left to bottom, like squiggles down, right? And then it just shows an arbitrary percentage number, like down 70%, down 60%, down 90%.
And it's just no context. There's nothing. It's just visual. Like, it's not just them that does it now. Like, a lot of videos, especially on YouTube, is just like that. It's just infographic agitprop, basically. Yeah,
so that was annoying. Like, I think Seaspiracy, what it does do well is it hits your heartstrings, right? It tells you what are the problems with fishing. So the first thing he tackles is dolphin safe. So dolphin safe is this logo that you see. It's like a little dolphin with the word dolphin safe, and you generally see it in cans of tuna. So what they're trying to tell you is that when we catch these tuna fish to make cans of tuna,
there's no bits of dolphin in it.
Well, not just that, but no dolphins were injured, right? And then they interviewed the guy who talked about the dolphin safe, and he was saying that, can you guarantee that no dolphins were injured? And he said nothing can be guaranteed. So, which he's leading that dolphins can be harmed during this hit. So you're wondering, how can dolphins be harmed? Well, in the fishing industry, they use these big giant nets to catch a bunch of fish. And what happens is that when they catch a bunch of fish, it's like
it's a drag net.
It's not like they just drag the net. So whatever gets caught inside it also becomes a victim. So dolphins happens to get caught inside it. But not just dolphins, but you have like seabirds, you have sea turtles, you have sharks. So you have what's called in the industry known as bycatch. So they're just so basically they weren't the primary target of what they were catching. And so these other creatures, they would just toss back in the ocean. Problem is, by the time they get tossed back in the ocean, they're already dead. So these sharks are like are gone. The turtles are no longer alive, and potentially dolphins. And so this dolphin safe is trying to say we're humane in catching these fish. But the thing is, with this fishing industry, they were showing that there's a lot of overfishing, and that fish are sold by buyers that you don't know if they're dolphin safe. One of the things they do is they have what's called they have a verifier observer, I guess, and these people are supposed to observe the fishing industry to make sure that everyone's doing their job correctly. But the problem is these guys can be bribed. These guys can be murdered. And in the documentary, they showed people who got murdered on these accidental trips on their job kind of thing. So there was that part of the story. And so, yeah, you start feeling bad about eating fish. You start feeling like, oh man, this industry is so corrupted, right? Do you remember that part in the movie where it's like near the end, they went to the Faroe Islands to show whaling?
Yeah.
And my girlfriend was watching with me, and she like started crying because it was quite brutal.
The whalings, yes, and they're spearing all the fucking pilot whales on the beach. It's kind of just give you that like the Cove vibes back then from that documentary about that cove in Japan where they did it. They all do the same thing. Yeah, they trapped the dolphins in the cove.
Well, actually, Japan was interesting because so in the beginning of the movie, they went to Japan and they were like covert ops and they found these Japan was like killing dolphins like intentionally, and you're like, why would they do that? And then you discover that it's called pest control because they were eating their bluefin tunas and they needed to kill the dolphins in order so that humans can have more of the bluefin tunas, right? So that was the whole idea. Anyways, the whaling in Faroe Islands, basically, they called this event the grind, where a bunch of the locals would go to the bay and then they would
They would like spear the fucking the whales and shit, basically.
Yeah, so they would like scare them with their motorboats so that they would swim inland, and then they would just like start spearing them to death. So here's the issue, because you watch this scene and you're like, oh my god, this is horrific. How could people do this? Right? The problem is they didn't talk about anything about the historical part of the island, and they didn't talk about the geography of the island. So the thing is, this Faroe Island is basically a rock in the sea. It's a really far away from Denmark. It's not a lot of land, so you can't grow food there. There's no farming or anything. So people who used to live there were the Norse, like the Vikings, right? And this is their way of life. Is that the only the only food source they had were whales. So this is a tradition that they had done for many generations. So this island where they do whaling, it's highly regulated. So it's not like they are overfishing like we do with the rest of the world. This is something that they do as survival, right? So these vegans, which in this spear conspiracy, trying to tell us like, hey, these guys are evil, they should eat plants, it doesn't make sense, because if you look at, say, carbon footprint, they might have a larger carbon footprint if a ship had to deliver bananas and avocados versus them just eating the whales that they could get locally, right? Like, people are just eating what's locally available to them, and I think for that, it's ethical and it makes sense.
Like, yeah, I was a little confused with this at the end too, because basically the majority of the movie and the points that you could get people to agree with is just like just the overfishing, right? Just the industrialization. That's just a massive expansion of industrialization of fishing, right? And obviously, when you get stuff like that, you cause a lot of problems, to a lot of imbalance, obviously, right? That's a lot of it is unsustainable, right? And it does cause a lot of troubles that go along with just increased catches of fish and shit like that, right?
But
I mean, like with that point, like okay, they go from that, and then they show this part, which is almost like a complete. It's a complete refutation of like what the theme they were kind of trying to show, because this when they were clubbing the whales, as brutal as it looked, right? Like, this was not something that was as comparable to the mass overfishing, because like you said, this was like something that was done for a long time, and it's like done with like local people that just do this thing that I guess they've been doing for generations. And yeah, it's all by just manpower, right? Like, you go onto the beach, you start spearing the whales. Like there's no like, and I remember there was a lot of scenes.
It's not like they're using guns or like.
Well, even then, like yeah, exactly. Earlier scenes, they just had some people that say, "Oh, we're fishing too much" or whatever, right? Like, "Oh, you have to slow down." And with these people, it would be like, this specific scene would be like, "Oh yeah, they're not overfishing or whatever, right? Like, they're doing exactly the same amount that they always do." So I mean, it was kind of like their own counterpoint to the rest of the movie. And then they showed it that it was brutal. Like, any kind of animal slaughter, like you slaughterhouses are notoriously fucking like brutally terrifying, right? Like, but that's how you source meat, unfortunately, right? And this is the same thing where like they kill these whales for meat, and it's gonna look brutal. But I mean, like, I was like, what are they trying to do? Like, this is like they're trying to show that this is bad, the other thing's bad, but these two are kind of diametrically opposite to each other, right? This is actually much more sustainable than the industrialized fishing and fishing farms and shit or whatever, right? Or what they showed to be fishing farms.
And I think that's the issue, is what they're trying to do is sell you this idea of don't eat fish. Like,
yeah, that was it. That's why I said at the end, like the only thing that connects all of this together is you just can't kill fish. They just have a problem with you killing fish.
Yeah.
And they had scientists, they had like fucking, I don't know, behavioral scientists or something, or people that just said basically saying,
they talked about
just saying like, oh yeah, fish probably have feelings and fish are probably afraid of stuff, right?
Actually, so okay, side conversation. So here's the thing, so watching Seaspiracy, I started deep diving into veganism and vegetarian, and like ethicalness of, like, you know how like there's I think something I heard as a kid is like, oh, the reason we don't eat dolphins because they're intelligent creatures, right? And so for some reason it's more ethical to eat something that's like a cow because I guess they're not as smart as dolphins.
Yeah,
right?
but pigs are fucking smart too, and we eat them by the billions of tons.
But we also eat octopus, and octopus are very intelligent creatures, and no one says anything about them. So like this whole idea of like intelligentness makes no sense. I think we don't eat dolphins because we find them cute. I don't think they have anything to do with how smart they are, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you got animals where it's just they're off limits because they're either pets or they're cute, or better yet, they're endangered, right? And obviously, fucking like okay, like the less of these guys that you send to the slaughterhouse, I guess, the better. I mean, I can't do anything about the fucking poor pig. They're just so fucking delicious, you know, that they're super smart. They get slaughtered in terrible ways, but they just taste so good.
They are very yummy. Yes, I agree.
Right, but like,
so that's my confusion.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, like but I don't know. I mean, like, because the guy that filmed it is a vegan, of course. He doesn't eat any like animal products at all, so super easy for him. And from his perspective, he's just like, yeah, you know, it's all murder, anyways. You know, it all looks terrible to him, though he's telling all of us.
But that's the dumb part, like the whole thing about like the pain thing, because it's not like, hey, do plants feel pain?
Yeah, no shit. Like when you slaughter all these animals in the slaughterhouse, they all feel pain. Like you can hear the animals screaming bloody murder. They all know about it. So even just saying, oh, but the fish has feelings too. It's just like, okay, but like fucking, they all fucking die this way. They all die horribly, anyways. Like I don't. It just feels like they're trying to throw everything at it, right? Like fish have feelings too. You shouldn't eat it.
Exactly the issue. Like when I was watching Spears Theory, basically they're just throwing everything at you, trying to say do not eat fish. Because like the number one thing that I found, because like that's how I felt too. Because when I finished watching, I felt like, oh man, eating fish is terrible. Right? But then when I started deep diving, I also noticed people were like asking, are these true? Like, is it this bad kind of thing? Is the fishing industry this unregulated? Is it this corrupt? Things like that. And I think it's like yes and no kind of thing. I think the problem with the movie or the documentary, and this is actually a common problem in a lot of documentaries or vegan documentary, I feel, is they have this complex problem and they oversimplify the problem and they come up with a very simple solution. But the thing is, that solution doesn't do enough. Like,
well, it doesn't do any, and it's also like, if they point out a real problem and then they fucking say, oh, and then they give a really, really dumb solution for really dumb reasons, then it just turns people off from it. And by turning people off from it, like they just wholesale, like will just say, oh, fuck the problem then as well. Like that's the problem I have with these with like fucking crusaders when they make these things, right, out of just straight feelings. Whereas like, okay, they can go and do the footage and actually point out something that's actually pretty real, pretty like detrimental, right? Like just for the overfishing, it's pretty bad, right? And it's But then they'll do stupid shit like saying, and also fish has feelings, so everybody should just stop eating fish, and we should just never just fucking fish ever again, or whatever, right? And then you're gonna get people like, what the fuck is this asshole saying, right? Fuck that. And then they will just, you know, like the entire problem of just like the overfishing and on this like way expanded industrialization of fishing, like it just also goes out the window too. Like, you know, because of this fucking crazy guy told you something completely batshit insane, you know, you're just gonna fucking, most people just say, fuck it, and like that goes insane. Just like it was like the Coney 2012 thing, right?
Oh yes, I remember the Coney. So yeah, so I thought that was a huge issue, is because like I think the documentary would be more better received if the message was we should reduce our consumption of fish. Kind of like
Yeah, or
better
it's just in a
message of
way that
vegans.
you can like sustain it, right?
Yeah, it's the idea of like, hey, this is more practical, right? The thing is, when you tell people don't eat fish, not many people are
Just
gonna
don't
do
eat
that.
fish because fish have feelings and you're murdering
Yeah.
them.
So
You're a murderer if you eat fish.
like we talked about the Faroe Islands. For them, you couldn't tell them not to eat whale because that's their only food
Yeah.
source, right? And so it didn't make sense for that. And not eating fish won't solve the problem because people aren't going to take that advice. To reduce our fish consumption, it's great. The other issue is that the documentary over exaggerates a lot of the claims they make.
Of course. Yeah.
And it's stupid because the facts are already devastating enough. Like they're already horrific to know about the number of bycatches, the decrease in population of all sea animals, other like in general, right? It's already pretty bad, but you don't need to mislead the audience because by misleading the audience, you when they figure out that it's a lie, then they're just gonna distrust the whole thing, right? So one big misleading information that I got from the movie was they talked about the Great Pacific Garbage Dump. So in the Pacific Ocean, there's this island of garbage that's collected, right? And they were saying like, if we look at this garbage dump, 46% of it is made of fish nets, while 0.0015% is made of straws. And he was complaining like, why is this plastic organization so concerned about straws when they're not looking at the fish net? And they're picking the tiny pebble in the sea of whatever, right? And they think it's like a whole conspiracy of the fishing industry paying them off, right?
Yeah.
So the issue was that I found is that they took something, a local problem, and they extrapolated and make you think that in the whole world's ocean is 50% is fish net, which is actually is untrue, right? If you look at the whole world, like in the whole world sea, fish nets make about 20% of the plastic in the ocean. 80% of plastic in the ocean is made of land use plastics. So that not just straws, but that goes with like plastic bags, plastic containers, all that stuff. Anything plastic that we create on land ends up in the ocean. 80% of the plastic in the ocean comes from land use. So fishing nets is an issue, but it's not the big pie. And the reason these plastic companies are concerned about straws, but they're not just concerned about straws, but they're concerned of any plastic being used, is because it's ending in our ocean, right? So that's the reason. But they never told us that. They're trying to mislead us that fishing that's made of 50%, but it just happens that island had 50% fish nets, but it doesn't represent the whole world
they
in terms of the
do
sea,
this
right?
with a lot of things. A lot of the, if you want to say viral or just want to say like the chic documentaries or shows that deal with this, they do this all the time, all the fucking time.
And it's
And
effective because
it's
felt
because
like
they're not trying to do anything else but shape your opinion. That's it.
that's right. They're
It's
shaping our
just
opinion.
agitprop, literally just agitprop.
Because
You know.
once you have this idea of like, oh, that makes sense and it's reasonable why they do what they do, it's like, because before you would feel this issue of like, yeah, why are they hiding all these fish nets? They weren't. It's a problem, but it wasn't the bigger fish for them, in their opinion, right? And something that I recognized was, they do all these interviews and they always make the people they interview look bad, like they're trying to hide something.
Yeah.
But I heard it's like they actually, well, because of the movie, they obviously have more footage. There were probably parts of the interview you never get to see.
Of course,
And
no.
so they always like cut it to
Of
make it
course,
look
they
like,
edit it, and obviously,
they edited it. So they got a meeting with the European Union, the guy who does the sustainable fishing.
Yeah.
And at this point in the movie, they were talking about the word sustainable. What does sustainable mean, right? And I do agree that the word sustainable was a scientific term that we use it so often in marketing that it's become a marketing term. Because I do feel like sustainable.
It's
When
a
you see the word
buzzword. It's a
sustainable,
buzzword.
it's a buzzword, and it does make you feel like, oh, this product is good because it has the word sustainable. But in reality, it's usually not sustainable.
Yeah. Organic,
Anyways,
grass-fed,
yeah,
sustainable.
cruelty-free,
No,
like bullshit words. Okay, so the EU guy was right when he talked about. He was trying to talk about like what the sustainable fishing looks like. He talks about like you have a principal in investment and it grows a certain amount of money, and then you just take the capital, and that every year the principal remains the same, and therefore you can have unlimited fish,
Yeah,
right?
you're not
And in
depleting it,
reality,
basically.
yeah, you're not depleting it. And in reality, that is fishing can work that way, right? Because fish lay more eggs than they need to survive their population. They overpopulate themselves because they expect prey or predators to eat them.
Yes.
So it's
I mean, like
fine.
in a previous documentary of I think it was one of the David Attenborough ones, and it was about the oceans, and the ocean, like the people in there, the scientists, experts, marine biologists, and everybody, their message was pretty simple, and it was like, yeah, there was also a critique against the pollution and the overfishing and everything, but the simple message, and it was fucking like a credible message from credible people, was basically like, you know, if you just don't overfish, if you could just cut it back and just allow the fish stock to also have a chance to replenish, like that's all it takes, because the fish, it's just like you said, like the fish, like they can they can build their numbers again pretty fast. They're not like fucking pandas or some shit, right? Like it's in their nature to reproduce and do all this stuff. And the ocean, you give it space, you give it time, most of it can heal itself pretty well, as long as you give it the fucking, like, the space and time, and you cut down on the pollution and the overfishing and shit. Like it can repair itself, right? So I mean, yeah, I mean, like, that message was, like, fucking, that was, a much better one than just like, don't eat fish because they fucking, they're scared when they die.
Yeah,
Like,
I think that's totally right. Like you give practical advice to people, right? If someone needed impractical advice, it doesn't help them at all.
well, I mean, like, it's his advice based on his feelings as a vegan for just
I feel like
animals.
it's almost like religion sometimes. Like,
It is.
the reason you're punished is because you didn't love God enough. You didn't do this
like,
enough.
it would be
oh.
like if some hardcore, like, Hinduist guy came over and said, like, fucking everybody should stop eating beef or whatever, right? And in a way, like, imagine if also he made a movie of the same thing, and it'll be like, Cowspiracy or whatever, and it's out to like kill the beef industry.
A legit film.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
it's the so Kip Anderson is one of the producer of Seaspiracy, and he made Cowspiracy in 2015.
Oh shit. Okay, so I guess it doesn't even have to be a Hindu guy. I just said Hindu because they don't eat cows. They worship the cows, right? But like along the same lines, like if they came out and said, like, you gotta stop eating. If they point out a real problem, right? Like saying like, oh, like industrialized beef production, is not it's expanding industrialized beef production as it is right now is causing a lot of problems, right? And it would be true. That's absolutely true, right? But then if he turns it around, if he just does his big fucking climax and he says, but you shouldn't eat beef because cows are gods, right? And they deserve to be worshipped and shit. Then it's the same shit. Like, it's like, okay, that's fucking, insane. For everyone that's not like Hindu, that's insane, right? Like, why would I stop eating beef because of this? And then the actual message of, like, you should do something. You should probably change a lot of, like, industrialized, expansive, like, fucking beef production and shit. Like, that will get lost into the ether. It's the same with this fish thing that gets lost in the ether because the vegan guy just has a hard-on for fish.
And I feel like that's a shame, because the Seaspiracy addresses a lot of interesting points, and I do think they filmed it in a way that does make you care. I felt really strong about, well, not about not eating fish, but the whole like overfishing issue, and like some of the things like fish farming. We thought that was like I thought fish farming was the future, and maybe it still may be
fish farming.
Future, but the thing is,
to
feed the fish,
I mean,
you need more fish, right? It was like the whole irony of like feeding the fish industry by saying that these big salmon, they need food, and what do you feed them? And then it's like, oh, we feed them grind up fish, right? So
I
I
feel
thought
okay.
that was
I
hilarious.
also that one it was a little bit of a. I think that was a little bit of a sleight of hand for you to, for everyone
Yeah,
too, because
right.
to raise any kind of animal, you do have to feed them
Yeah,
kind of more. Anyways, like regardless of what kind of livestock, you're like my dog. I have to feed him more than I'm not gonna fucking harvest my dog, right? But like fucking like you, they do to grow. They need to eat more. Then
yes, that's
like
right.
it's always a surplus. So I mean, like with the fish farms, it should be a fucking no brainer that you like in order to feed them, you do need their feed has to be more than their like fucking net weight or whatever the fuck, right?
Yeah,
And I feel like they just he did a sleight of hand to make you feel like holy shit, this is a big deal. It's a bad thing. It's like okay, no, like that's how you fucking
I feel
farm
like he did that
animals.
for everything because everything he does, he always makes it feel like, oh man, I'm in danger. This is really high risk for me.
Like
Like
well that's the
remember?
thing, like oh this is a bad, like this is a fucking terrible, like yeah, exactly. And then if you think about it, like okay, like like you the stuff that is insane is just it's scaremongering and shit. It is
It is
agitprop
scaremonger,
stuff.
and it's not like he's a hero because people has been filming these or uncovering these secrets way before him. But I feel like
Yeah,
he just needed credit.
obviously.
In the film, it felt like he needed credit. Um, the other point I want to touch on is the Thailand. They talked about slavery in the
Yeah.
like in order, and the thing is that if we stop eating fish, slavery would still occur.
Yeah, they
Right?
do it for other fucking like what are you gonna like that place that's notorious for like sex trafficking, even minors still and shit, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
oh, what you're gonna stop that from fucking just by taking away the fishing? And like, okay, buddy, like if you want to go save Thailand, you're gonna have to do a lot more than fucking trying to save the fish.
And that's my issue with seaspiracy was that I feel like the message is lost when you start going and trying to like pick every part of the conversation of like you shouldn't do that because of this. Have you heard of this little issue? And
Yeah, well, it
it's
would
just
be
like
fixed with the fish.
yeah, some of them are direct like overfishing.
Yeah.
Yes, if we didn't eat
Mass
fish or we
shooting
lower
problem in the
consumption.
US, if you didn't eat that much fish, it would be solved.
Yeah.
Racism, if only you didn't eat that much fish.
Okay. So a point I want to make is, okay, vegans they try to feel like what they're eating is conflict free. That like, hey, I'm eating plants. I'm not hurting any animal, spiritual, blah blah blah. Right?
Yeah.
Here's the problem with veganism: is that not all vegetables are equal. And what I mean by that is they're not all conflict free because avocado are the new blood diamond, right? In Mexico, there's gangs that try to control the flow of avocado because it's such a huge export for them. It's a huge moneymaker, right? So you have these huge military arms protecting these avocado farms, and the city is a wreck, right? So avocado is not a conflict-free food. And then when you start talking about other like vegetables or superfood, quinoa is a big one, right? Quinoa is grown in Peru. It's a local food, and because of its popularity, the people who are the local people can no longer afford quinoa.
the
They
price
can't eat the
the
food
price is
that's
it has inflated so much.
inflated. Yeah, so like if you're a vegan and you want to feel good about yourself, thinking that like, oh, I don't eat animal, blah blah blah. Think of what food do you eat? Like if you're eating avocado, it's like you're not like any better. If you're eating quinoa, you're not any better.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I
then when you
feel
talk
like
about like,
if they want to be vegans, they can be vegan, but sometimes it's just you might get one where they just feel like they have the superiority complex or whatever,
mm-hmm,
where they feel like they probably have fucking problems with you. They'll think of you like of some barbarian, just causing mass murder and death for eating meat. And yeah, like you said, they would view themselves very highly because they're vegan. It's supposed to be this Christ-like diet lifestyle. But like if it were just to be like, oh, you think you're doing it just for, I don't know, fucking human rights or some shit. Yeah, you're exactly right. You're like, yeah, you're not doing. It's all dick all. Like if you just don't want to eat meat, no animal byproducts, whatever. But like, it doesn't. diet should never make someone feel superior to another person. Like what someone eats should never be something that makes them feel superior over another person. It
And
should just be as
what I
simple as
think
that.
that's what I think is interesting, because like when we talk about food, there's the because food you can go into so many realms. Like you can go into ethics that we talk about with veganism, about livestock, about fish, and then you could talk about things like health, like what type of food, what is the healthy food, things like that, right? Because there's other documentaries. I think there's one called What the Health, which is a vegan documentary. Same producer as Cowspiracy, Seaspiracy. There's Game Changer that was
This is a
pretty
big
popular.
vegan lobby that's going on.
There's this vegan movement, yeah. So for diets, let's talk about diets for a bit. Is that nutrition science is like that type of science. It's almost like
Almost a pseudoscience.
almost like a pseudoscience, but it's kind of
Well,
like
because most of the
psychology.
time, most of the time it's not like scientists that are like dropping like the more big like nutritional fucking news and shit. It's
Yeah.
mostly just like wellness gurus and shit that are
And that's
trying to
the
make a
thing, is
buck
a
off of
lot of
it.
their evidence are all anecdotal, right? It's just
Oh
like
yeah.
this guy did it and he has all these improvements, right? And they can show like these scientific evidence that supports their facts, but they're all vague, or they're all like tangentially yes kind of thing, or even though it's factually true, it's not actually what's happening kind of thing, right? Um, what I find, what I found to be consistent in the science group is that people should eat more of a plant-based diet, like say 50% fruits and vegetables, and then to have some whole grains and meat, and to avoid processed food, to eat more whole foods. Those are like the one that most people are on board with. Like that's the consensus of what a good diet should be, right? But in reality, the best diet for anyone is a diet that you can stick with, right? Because like if you heard like paleo diet is the best diet to be a bodybuilder, or if you're want to be vegan, if you can't follow it, if you can't stick to it, then it's not a good diet for you, right? So it doesn't. So whatever diet you can stick to is probably the diet that works best for you. And as long as you don't overeat, then you're good. But yeah, so I thought that was.
What did you want me to say? No, fuck
well,
you.
Like, well, what's your like the other thing about diet or food is interesting when you talk about like what you eat makes you superior. I think in some ways it can be in terms of finance, because to eat healthy, you need to be. It costs a lot more than to eat unhealthy, right? So I feel like for some people who are in tougher situation, or who are in a lower income bracket, it's eating healthy is not an option for them, and that eating McDonald's a lot is a affordable thing for them, right? So I thought that was interesting. The last one I want to bring up was in a lot of diet fads, like say paleo, you always hear this. They'll say like, "Oh, the reason paleo works is because our ancestors ate this food," right?
like they know what the fuck their ancestors ate.
Well, one is yeah, and two is why does that matter? Because our ancestors probably ate whatever was available to them.
Yeah,
right?
no
If
shit.
pizza and burgers were available to them, they'll probably eat that, and we wouldn't say like pizza and burgers is what a healthy diet would be, right?
Look, most of the times when they say that, it's just fucking idiots. It's just a bunch of fucking morons that go out and say these things either as a grift because they're selling some shit, or they're just literally idiots and they can't think otherwise. They're just fucking they're done.
Yeah.
And like everything that you eat, all like to even sustain like 7 billion people in the world, like all the food, all of your diet has been like changed, in a more globalized way, right? Like fucking potatoes and shit. Fucking talk about ancestors. Everybody outside of South America don't have fucking potatoes and fucking stuff like that. New World crop enabled for the world population to even sustain itself. They needed the introduction of like New World crops, right? Like potatoes, and maize and stuff like that. So like everything has already changed, just because we already have this just because we can grow the foods that can sustain a population like this already, like
Yeah.
every food has changed. Like there's no like fucking, there's nothing that's like, oh yeah, this is something that my ancestors ate 20,000 years ago. Like that's probably not even as good diet and nutrition wise as whatever the fuck they have available to you now, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I like, this is not to say like fucking, like fucking GMO shit is superior, but I mean, just like naturally,
Well, it's
fucking.
superior in a sense that we can grow food in a consistent way. To
Yeah,
feed
I mean,
7 billion.
I'm not saying like, I'm not saying automatically it's just superior. It's got its faults, it's got its advantages, but
Yeah.
just the modern food that you get now, like how people just have access to these things and they've, they can cultivate it throughout the years. You cultivate a much higher yielding, much more bigger, and like fucking loaded with probably a lot more nutrition than some paleo fucking crop.
Do you think globalization is a good thing for food? Like when we talk about overfishing,
I don't know. Like
we talk about livestock. A lot of it is globalization, right?
It's okay. Like you gotta break it down and stuff, because if globalization, I mean, like it's a good thing to be able to
have avocado
feed
year
everybody,
round.
but it's not like exactly like the global mode of production contributed to that, right? Like a lot of times, like right now, what you get is a lot of not just wastage, but also just like fucking like whatever sells is getting produced, right? And whatever,
Yeah.
and if it's very profitable, then it gets overproduced to the point where not like, oh, you're thinking overproduction as in abundance, but overproduction as in depletion. Like you're producing unsustainably a lot of things. A lot of that stuff isn't good. A lot of this globalization, that part of globalized like production is not good. The stuff that is good is the stuff that you can sustainably feed everyone, right? Like, I mean,
what's an example of that?
They had this, I forget the exact terms, but it was almost like we had an agricultural revolution within the 90s. No, not like the 1900s till now, right? I think it was somewhere in the 60s or whatever. Basically, there was this one guy and a team of guys that were looking on making like really high yield crop. The guy, his name was like Norman Borlaug or whatever. But they're all like scientists. They're concerned about just the food supply not being able to meet the demands of a growing world or some shit like that.
Makes sense. Okay.
So they did a lot of experiments of crops to try to grow very high yielding crops, and that can be grown in multiple different climates, hardy crops, right? And they did that, and that directly contributed to like a lot of the world being able to grow these crops and feed a bunch of their populations, right? And at that time, in history, if people are familiar with it, everybody was always concerned about some Malthusian trap. So like fucking, Thanos being concerned about there's too much population in the universe and you need to kill half of them. That was already kind of like a thing back then, right? People are
I was gonna
like,
say, like,
what are you gonna do about the what are you gonna do about the overpopulation?
Can't sustain our population. Like, yeah, like you would think that these measures of like how do we feed all these people, maybe the answer is we shouldn't solve it because it's our computer threshold to keep us equal. To keep a balance in the world.
That was the thinking. There was a lot of thinking where it was like, it was kind of like, oh, maybe we should have a population plan, maybe a forceful population plan. Like that was the thinking. And plus, this was during the Cold War too, right? So, I mean, like fucking, you want to wipe out like half the Soviet world or half the American world? They're thinking about that. Some circles probably were, just thinking, oh, this would solve like an overpopulation problem. But
like, I do feel.
But at the end, these guys were fucking. I mean, this guy basically just contributed to, potentially saving millions of people and also contributing to, fucking. We don't think of food shortage anymore like we did during that time, because I would read the stuff, the historical stuff back then, right? A lot of people were concerned. A lot of countries too were concerned about like food shortage. It was a much more like common worry of food shortages.
It's now like food distribution is the issue.
Right? Yeah, and now it's not like there is no fucking impending immediate impending like fear of food shortage like they were, because like
Mhm.
Borlaug and those guys fucking did it. Like, and when they did it, when they made the breakthroughs for the crops, they didn't
Mhm.
just fucking make like a incorporated fucking stock, incorporated company and start to fucking profit off of it. They went to all
Mhm.
these poor countries and basically just gave it to them, taught them, right? As he spread
Mhm.
the new crop seeds everywhere, right? So
Mhm.
like everybody fucking are able to feed themselves off of that. And
Yeah.
like that's one of the benefits of like if you harness like a globalized resources to solve problems like that shit, you can do that. And later on when, now, like you're back to the overpopulation. Some people are thinking about overpopulation again, but like, it's not as dire as it was, as it seemed as it was, even back in the '60s and shit when
Yeah.
before this all
Well,
happened.
what do you think of hard limits? Like, for example, for me, like I want to be a minimalist, and so like I make these hard limits for myself. Like, so
Yeah, I
say
think.
clothing, if I can't find a place in my closet for this clothes, I can't buy it, kind of thing. Like, kind of like, but then this whole idea of like maximizing our yield is basically getting a bigger closet, right? Rather than sticking to the rule of
Well,
like,
it's like okay, it's because the things, I guess the concepts aren't really divided yet. Like it's good to
mm-hmm,
have a surplus of production or something, right? Like
yeah,
that. The thing you don't want is like overproduction. You don't want like hoarding. You don't want that. Like yeah, like
mm-hmm,
you said, the new thinking is distribution, because it's just like the old classic Marxian theory, where it's like once the forces of production are much more developed, like the relations necessarily have to change, right? So
mm-hmm,
that's literally what we're seeing now. Like we're getting to much more advanced forms of production,
mm-hmm,
uh, and now it's like thinking, okay, so how, like that part is more advanced, but then the other parts are much more lagging. Like how do you get it? How do you distribute it? How do you
yeah.
determine like
Well,
what
we kind of
what
see that with real world vaccine right now, right? It's the
well
same.
oh, definitely. But I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't have to think, oh, it's a bad thing, I'm just expanding the closet, this is not sustainable. Well, you can have like increase in production, and also you can distribute it or even just ration it, like
Right.
equitably in a way, right? Like you don't have to be like even with the hand sanitizers and shit. People, you don't
Yeah.
have, you can just be like, yeah, one guy cannot buy the whole shelf of hand sanitizer, right? And
Okay.
what
So I see. Yeah.
so then it's like, and then it's like, and most of the backlash against something like that is strictly just ideological, because like
Yeah.
materially, obviously it makes sense. Like how much hand sanitizer, just for the example, how much hand sanitizer are you going to use? Take the whole shelf, you can use that for 10 years for you and your family or whatever, right? Like it's
Yeah.
it's way too much. But they, like the people that would defend that action, it's just strictly from an ideological view, where it's like,
So
okay, well then you're infringing upon my freedoms to purchase what I want, or some shit like that, right? So I
yeah.
think a lot of that has to do with like there's going to be a societal change to deal with that, where it's like, okay, that kind of ideological bullshit, it's just not going to fly anymore, right? If you, especially
Yeah.
if material problems start to manifest itself, right? Then stuff like that is not, you don't have the luxury of just like, oh yeah, well he can say that because like that's not a real problem. Once it does become a real problem, just like literally like censorship with the fucking anti-vaxxers and stuff, now because it's become an actual problem, they're just actively censoring them out.
So.
Before this
Mhm.
happened, people would be like, no, we're not going to do that, we're totally, like they believed in the specter, the phantom of something that's called like, oh, freedom of speech or some shit, right?
Mhm.
Until it literally hit them in the ass, and they're like, okay, we can't let the fucking crazies derail a bunch of shit, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the fucking, they say came down with the ban in a lot of places, that before you could not, you could just buy the entire shelf of whatever product and cause shortage, right? Now
Yeah.
places are like, yeah, you can't fucking do that because we just went through that experience, and fucking real life material fucking concerns out trumps crazy ideological bends and shit. So and you see a bunch of people now that they went through it, They say
Yeah.
the same shit too. Like, yeah, you can't let the fucking guy, you can't let the fucking guy just buy the whole shelf of hand sanitizer and gouge people like outside on the parking lot, selling it like reselling it, right? And they'll say, yeah, fucking banhammer that guy, right? You can't limit, ration it out or whatever. And then also with the anti-vaxxers, you have a whole shit ton of people that are saying now, where it's like, yeah, totally limit their fucking freedom of speech to say that kind of shit. Like that, this is the new fire in the fucking movie theater deal, right? So, I mean, I think like just like overpopulation would be a problem. The use the unsustainable use of resources is a problem too. I don't, and also like just straight up industrialized expansion. Yeah, just a never ending expansion, obviously, because it's not sustainable. That's a problem, right?
Yeah.
But to think
So
that my issue would be like, oh yeah, so then we would have to forcefully limit the population. I mean, like no, because I think as it proves in a lot of these rich countries, like the population just kind of just tapers off, right? And you get people not having like 6 kids to a family, right? I think it will just the population might problem. It will just go with the flow of the material relations in society, right? And most of the people that are now, actually, ironically, some of the people that are, you know who are like big proponents of more birth rates.
overpopulation. Africa?
In developed countries, it's usually like the supremacists, the white supremacist people or whatever, right? Because their argument is like if you live in like in one of those countries where you view the white race as being overpopulated by like African races or some shit, right? Their argument is like, oh no, our race is going to be wiped out because our birth rates cannot replace us, and then those people, you know, like the fucking they say the other guys.
What's the white supremacist country that you're referring to?
No, I mean like white supremacists in a developed country that would be like majority like European descent or whatever, right? They would be, they're deathly afraid of population replacement, right? So ironically, those guys are big proponents of fucking more population, just for the simple fact of they're just scared out of their minds of like you know, like non-white people giving birth and shit. So I mean like, and they would be the first. They're actually one of the ones to criticize the most of plans to depopulate. Depending on what they would welcome depopulating like the global south. But you talk about depopulating them in their own country, like, oh yeah, we gotta think about overpopulation.
You talk about,
they'll be like,
no,
absolutely not.
You talk about how population kind of has its own like maybe diminishing return kind of thing, right? Where it gets really big and then it suddenly starts to decide like, oh, let's just kind of keep status quo or start decreasing.
Yeah.
Like find its own. But I find that's because of population grows because of a country being more developed, right? Because if your country is like not developed, you have more kids because you're like a fish. You don't know how many of your kids will survive, so you overpopulate that number, right?
Yeah, but it's literally a transition part. So a good one would be the China, because China was like that, where it was like sub-Saharan Africa during like in the Congo or whatever, where families have had many kids, and just the simple fact that a lot of them won't survive, right? And then and then because under Mao, they did the massive like healthcare program, so all of a sudden you had this massive population surge that broke 1 billion people, right? Because you had that old style mindset where you had to have a whole bunch of kids, but then the new health, like the new fucking like the healthcare that came to the population ensured that a lot more of them would survive. They would have grown.
And now they're
old.
like, ah, shit.
Yeah, so then
all you would survive.
So then they overcorrected because they're like, oh shit, we have way too much people now. We're gonna do the one child policy, right?
Yeah.
And then now they're like, oh, we regret doing the one child policy because it turns out that for China and a lot of other countries in the same example, you get that period of if you're poor, you have a whole bunch of people, just
Yeah.
like the U.S. did during the like that period, the cowboy period or
Sorry.
whatever. Fuck, right?
What do you think parents feel like when, say, you have 5 kids, but you really expected only 2 to live, and let's say all 5 lives?
Well,
Would you be like,
because
ah, shit,
well,
I didn't plan for this?
I think it's not like what it would be different from what you're thinking now in a developed country because you're thinking, oh, how do I do how do I think about the college costs and whatever and all
Yeah.
those things, right? Because all these costs are already set in your society that you're aware of. But that transition period where you have a whole bunch of like, if you have 5 kids surviving and your entire society or most of your society and your life in the countryside on the farm was just like, oh, I just have more farmhands or some shit like that. The thought doesn't really occur to you like, oh yeah, the costs or whatever for
Yeah.
upkeep of kids and also to if they wanted to have education and shit, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't really factor in, and also they're not built. These infrastructures are not built, and I think that's
Yeah.
what important for people to understand that like yeah, in the beginning, these countries they'll have overpopulation if they have the increase in like healthcare and life expectancy, but it does taper off. But all of this is all a big caveat because the country literally has to work. Like the country has to actually be competent enough to pull this off. This is very hard to pull off because, like I said,
Do you need
you're in that
to
you're in
have
that
that?
yeah,
like,
you have to have
first?
that will, but you need to have capable like fucking policies, and you
Yeah.
need to like
So before Mao did the whole healthcare thing, he should have made policies, right?
well
So that to ease
no,
the transition.
I think like I think they would. I think he did pretty good. I think Deng
Yeah.
Xiaoping when he came in, those guys overcorrected on the one child policy. I think
Well, I
that
guess
part was unnecessary. I mean, because what you need to do, like the exact thing that they did was correct. It was like the same path as most of the other like rising countries did, where like yeah, you took care of the healthcare, you took care of the school and the life expectancies and shit, right? But you gotta also follow through. You gotta also devote like decades of not just the schooling, but also like development, right? Because if you have a higher population, okay, well, like I said, there's no schools or whatever. There's nothing around to even have you entertain the thought of, oh, how do I make a better
but the
life? Like, what is there?
reason I'm talking
Schools,
about this is
universities?
the reason I asked this like question is for like Africa, like for places that aren't developed but will be coming developed. Can we learn from like how countries got to this level like China and do it better so that we don't have this issue with that transition, like you said?
Yeah, we can definitely learn, but it's like to put it into like I think for them to put it into for them to put it into practice is very hard because it has to deal with what the situation is on the ground. You can't just be like, oh, China did this, so if I did this exactly the same, it's going to turn out the same, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to. It's different fucking historical context, and that's that's a big thing. Like people always assume these really silly things where it's like, oh, it worked in X place, so we copy and paste over here. It's going to be it won't, and
Yeah.
and also like people don't realize like when you do something like that, it takes a long time, right? So your first generation might not reap much of the fruits of the labor, right? It's like it's a long fucking term
I think
sort of
I
deal,
remember
and
hearing
then
about the
yeah,
one
if
child
you have a
policy.
population, yeah, if you have a population that's like they expect to fucking live in the luxury of whatever, right? And
Yeah.
they, like you're not gonna. It's like planting a tree. You're planting a tree not for yourself. You're planting a tree for the person that comes after you.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a population that's willing to do that, and also if you don't have like a state that it can that can just stay on course
Yeah.
and do all this shit, because you're gonna catch a lot of flack for a lot of this stuff first. It's not gonna work, right? Like you're not gonna get fast returns. So
But go ahead.
I mean, like for Africa, it's like their whole situation is different. Like they're not. A lot of them are beholden to a lot of these international like money lending institutions like IMF and stuff, right?
Mhm.
So it's not like, I mean, like they can try to do some things, but maybe they'll be like fucking hamstrung because the IMF will be like, I'm not gonna give you loans if you keep on doing it this
That's
way.
true because
And then
Africa,
and then also they have leaders that
Mhm.
probably aren't competent. Some of them are probably super corrupt. So
Well, I
and
was
then
gonna say Africa is just so like internationally influenced, right? There's so many nations that have their hands in Africa,
yeah.
whereas China was its own nation, so it's definitely a little
Yeah,
bit
and
different.
that's the difficult thing because the way the China came out through violent revolution for independence or whatever, right? If you, especially in Africa, a lot of them, especially the francophone countries, are all still somehow under the thumb of France. It financially is the big one. Like there's like this French policy that like all these Africans have to like fucking hold at least a portion of like French loans or investments or whatever in their own like sovereign countries' banks or some shit like that, right? Like it's just like it's kind of a shit show. Like they're you're tying their hands behind their backs and saying like, okay, so now develop, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that brings us a good point. I'm not sure what that point would be.
One of these days, I can really get into this fucking thing. Like if anybody wants an episode where you want to listen to it and fall asleep really fast, I can really get into it.
Oh, sorry.
I could do another discount history episode one of these days.
I just remember what I was thinking. So the one-child policy, I remember seeing a video about it, and they were saying that they don't see the problem with it until 2 to 3 generation, and to correct it, it takes about 2 to 3 generation, right? Like they were talking about the inverse triangle, where like you're talking about before Mao days, you have all these kids, right? So you would have the grandparent, you have the parents, and then you would have a lot of kids, and you have this base pyramid of these grandkids or these children. But then with the one-child policy, that flips everything around.
Yeah, and this is
where now.
I think like when they say that, they view it from the perspective of like a labor force that they want the base at like a pyramid for the labor force, like the next generation. You're gonna get a lot more capable workers to be able to support the previous generation, which is the more narrower portion of their shitty pyramid that they come about, right? And strictly from like a labor pool, labor reserve perspective, that's what they're looking at. That's the model that they're basing it off of, right? And but like inverted pyramids, basically, like when you go into these countries of developed countries, for some of them that are worried about a reserve pool of labor, what they do is fucking they want immigrants to come to fill up that part, right? But like at the base of it, it's like you don't need to worry about that fucking reserve, that just needing that
because we have robots,
a larger base, because the product they're missing the big fucking part, which is like it's just you're looking at just raw production, right? Yeah, increasing that base of the pyramid is one way to increase it, right? Like you get more younger working hands to come in to work, produce, so then you can support the older non-producing retirees or whatever up on top. But that's not the only thing that you need, right? And obviously the big problem it would be obvious to most people is like, okay, this just means you always need an ever expanding. If only you're using this model without any consideration, what do you mean by raw production? That means ever expanding. You have to have an ever expanding base, right? Because fucking your current base of whatever young people, all of us working right now, we need an even bigger one beneath us in the next generation to support all of us and them. And then under them, they need an even bigger one underneath them to support them, and right?
Yeah.
So, but like, if you just look at production, exactly, it's that way of looking at like demographics is a pyramid scheme sort of demographic, and it's mostly people that are very concerned. They want a fucking source of fucking cheap labor force, right? They would be like, yes, that's the problem. But if you get away from that rhetoric, right, then you can say, okay, well, what if you just raise productivity, right? And that would achieve basically the same thing without needing an ever expanding base, right? So it's like, okay, so what are they talking about? Like fucking automation is one of them, right? And that's why fucking China is going for automation, because it's like, oh, okay, and Japan wants to do it as well because, like both countries, they don't have a lot of immigration going in there. They don't want immigration going there. China because they already have a lot of people, and Japan because they fucking discriminate against that kind of shit as well, right? So like what they do is okay, then they're viewing it as saying like okay, raise the production through fucking more robotics, more things that can raise the productivity, well, the production, right? Per person or whatever, right? That's how they're going to fucking deal with it. And that takes care of a population problem per se, because I think overall it's a good thing for people like you that are worried about production. I mean, overpopulation. That the population will naturally, through the course of this, it will just kind of like
Oh, I don't.
fucking.
I actually am not too worried.
Okay, well, the arguments that are brought up, they should rest assured that the populations will eventually kind of stabilize, I guess.
Yeah.
And because we have much more advanced production technologies and society and how it's organized around it, it won't be a fucking problem, right? Like, but that is for countries that got their shit together. For countries that don't got their shit together, you can tell, like, you can worry about that because it'd be like, oh, like you're just fucking squeezing the rest of if it's just literally just for short-term gain, you're not like preparing for long-term anything, then yes, you're going to get screwed. See it in people, you see it in a lot of instances in North America where people are losing pensions, or they're not going to get as much of a pension as they are going to get, right? Because they're either pension funds are fucking, like they're unsustainable or whatever. The social services are unsustainable. And that comes from a short-term squeeze just for the sake of profit, right? You're not setting aside resources for stuff like that, for taking care of an older population. You're not setting aside resources to substitute, I guess, a shortage in production or whatever, right? What you're doing is ironically fucking getting like trying to get as cheap labor as possible, and also fucking squeezing as much as possible from it too. So at the end all you get is entities that have very good profitability, have lots of money, but you have no social safety net anymore, and you have an old population that theoretically you should be able to support, but you can't because fucking they've dried them out, right? So I mean, it's like it's a big fucking problem. I think is one of the number one problems that in this Western society they have to deal with, and they're not doing a good job of it. And like it's insane too, because they're worried about fucking like, oh, what will happen if the robots, like we always talk about this back in a lot of our past episodes. It's a real worry here, insanely, about robots, because it's like, oh, what are you gonna do once nobody has a job, right?
I think that's the challenge. Is because we're used to the how the world works a certain way, or
exactly.
we only know
they
the
don't want to
solutions
change
of the past.
Exactly, they don't want to change anything about the current model right now, right? So obviously, you get stuff where like, oh god, the robots are scary and shit, right? Oh, maybe we should stop the advancement of production, and that's completely insane. Like it's not like, what are you gonna do? Like try to suck the ocean dry? You can't do it.
I think this is an issue called complex system. So there's this when we think of problem solving, like when you look at like STEM, like science, technology, that they always teach you like how do you look at a problem. You always break it down to its pieces, and you kind of solve the pieces, kind of thing. But the thing is that we're really bad at complex problems, where just because you can solve a piece, it doesn't solve the problem, and you don't really know what the problem is until you have it all connected, kind of thing.
Yeah,
and it's really difficult. And like the whole idea of like population, or like how do you distribution of wealth and things like that. It's that complex system where you can make policies that are for one case, but
specific
it doesn't solve this whole
stuff.
complex.
Yeah, exactly. It's useless in the whole. Yeah, in the aggregate, it's not anywhere comprehensive enough.
Yep, exactly. So like you don't know how, like,
Yeah,
for
there's
example, like
minimum
systemic
wage,
racism or
systemic
minimum
racism,
wage.
minimum wage. Even UBI is a short term like suggestion, right? Like
Hmm.
UBI in the long term is not fucking something that you should do. It's not something that you should fucking like lean back on for forever. All of these things are all short term
Oh,
suggestions or whatever.
how's UBI short term? I'm curious. What
Well,
do
I
you
mean,
mean
like,
by?
because right now, like, if you just give him money, yeah, like you can distribute it in a way, right, to
Hmm.
the lower quarters. But eventually, because like you're just doing it by exchange, you're not doing anything to change the like any of the relations in production of society. Like
Hmm.
you're just gonna end up with the same problem, and the costs are going to catch up to you anyways, right? Like,
Oh, I see. It's
right,
not
like
a permanent solution.
no, it's
It's like
not.
a
It's
band-aid.
a yeah, exactly. It's a
And
band-aid to try to give a push towards like how to restructure and change everything. But yeah,
mhm.
you can't just stop at UBI and be like, oh, this is it forever, right? Because the same problems are gonna manifest itself later on, right?
Do you think do you think as a world that's how we solve problems where we try
And
to push each other to the right direction and it's just all about course control where you just
no, I honestly don't think. I think the world they don't know what the fuck. I think it's more. You think it's probably think it's more orderly. I think it's a lot more chaotic. I think it's even more chaotic if you think about what individual countries kind of do. Like it's all over the fuck place. And I would probably say that this virus was a kind of a litmus test for how competent and how can your government deal with things right now. So you could see like governments like New Zealand, they pulled it off and whatever, right? In the Western world. Governments like, Canada and America, we didn't pull off. Like they're fucking around in there. Right. So I mean like every so often you rarely get a chance to see what like a fucking a real world execution of all this, not just by some shitty feel good trial, but like real crisis hits, you can see what kind of happens. And I feel like what this kind of demonstrated is most countries, more often than not, they exist in a state of managed chaos. It's all short
yeah.
term. It's all basically for immediate gratification of interests,
Yeah.
right? So something like this happens where it demands a lot of fucking coordination. It demands a lot of like coordination. It demands a lot of synergy between
Yeah.
like the population and stuff. A lot of mobilizational power and fucking plans and goals, right?
Do you
And
think
all of it,
mhm.
like you said, in a comprehensive package, right? You have to deal with it comprehensively, all aspects. And, obviously you can tell the ones that failed pretty hard, right? Fucking not equipped to deal with it.
You think like if humans live shorter lives, like say we only live till 30, things would change quicker? Like I think one of the challenges like with rules and laws is because of how long we live that these rules and laws like or customs don't change because we live so long and like
Of course, yeah.
because
I
the longer
think
you mhm.
something like that, yeah, it definitely changes everything. Your entire culture changes if you have people dying, dropping dead at 30. you know, it definitely does.
Mhm.
If our life expectancy plummeted, yeah, of course you're not going to be living life the same way you are. And that's the thing. Like something has to cause that, right?
Mhm.
And you're not gonna think about, oh fuck, I'm still living in my parents' basement at 30, but it's okay, or whatever, right? Like
Yeah, because
it's
it's not
just
happy
everything
life
will
yet.
change. Yeah, well, everything will fucking change, and that's like I think it's just hard for people to kind of like you have to have like a dynamic like analysis of stuff. When a lot of people analyze stuff, it's always copy and paste because they all think of it as static, right? Like,
Mhm.
oh, what would it be like if fucking aliens came to the world and shit? Would we still go to TGNI Fridays and everything? Like, like they just assume that oh, I'm very familiar with what normal life is like. Well,
Yeah,
like I superimpose that on something like that, right?
right.
And it'll be like society would just look different if something as big as that happened. right?
Yeah, no, I agree. That.
Which is kind of like
Mhm.
whenever you guys like superheroes is kind of a funny thing because I've a lot of
Oh,
the
how they haven't
superhero like
changed at all? They're all
yeah,
the
they haven't
same
changed.
thing.
I'm like, no, they would. I feel like they would definitely change. But in a way, if you look at like the people that do superhero like comics and movies, in a way, maybe if their critique was like, this is what modern society is realized with the way of thinking that they think, and I'll
Mhm.
explain it because I just really butchered that. Like in modern society, you think about like hardcore evangelical Christians or whatever. The majority of the U.S. population, right? A lot of them, they are hardcore Christians, right? Like God, the real thing to them, like to the point where like it will dictate what they believe in life, right? Like this omnipotent power or whatever, right? Well,
Mhm.
in a way, like Superman is just that, but with God that actually fucking came down to earth, right? Like,
Mhm.
and I feel like people already live like that in a way that's kind of ridiculous logically because like you don't have a Superman that a literal God that came to the earth and planted his foot down, but people live their life and have their whole beliefs and even societies based on like on a literal interpretation of God being there, right? Like, oh fucking like we have to back then it was like you gotta like punish the gays because God doesn't like that. Like to them is like a real being that has dictates that they have to follow through with, right? And I feel like in a way, if from my own like thinking, I'm like, yeah, like if obviously the superhero world to me would be ridiculous because normal world, our current world, would look completely different if we had beings like that. But I can totally understand if the comic book creators were doing like a sort of like a tongue in cheek critique, where it's like, well, you know what? In my comic book world, I'm actually already putting God on in the way that people already imagine him in the real world, right? So in my comic book, in Superman, everybody still stays the same because that's how it's like in America already. They believe fucking God is there. There's this omnipotent power that can do all this. Is already walks amongst them. So all I did was just fucking have him as Superman put on a costume and actually be there for you to see. Society
Mhm.
looks the same because Americans already believe it like that. And I thought, like fucking okay, if it was that way, I can totally see that fucking version of like what they're trying to show.
Mhm.
I don't know. That was just like my little fucking comic book comment.
The idea of things don't change. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, that would be like one way that I guess you could fucking spin it that way. It's like, oh yeah, all they're doing is just showcasing fucking this real life society already, but with even more tangible God that you can see and reference.
Mhm.
I think it's
Hmm.
it's it's a critique because it's pointing out the absurdity of real life of why like this idea that holds sway over a bunch of people, and it's not a fucking swipe on religion in general. I like literally the fucking point is some of these like evangelical fucks that are like just super hardcore into this to the point where they want it to dictate not only their lives but other people's lives forcefully. Like this is what the critique is against, right? Like they are
Mhm.
already acolytes on Earth, right? So like fucking when you have like I remember whatever comic book version where Superman is like evil or whatever, and then he has a bunch of acolytes that follows him in the comic books. I know. I just feel like that itself is a little bit too real, in as a concept because you already have acolytes like that here on Earth.
Mhm. Mm. Oh yeah, fair enough.
Is Phil still here? Yeah.
He has not
Ah,
spoken a word.
I'm still here. I'm dying.
Jesus Christ. Were
Just
you like
enjoying your
conscious?
conversation.
Were you
Yeah,
conscious the whole time?
yeah. Oh, this cough is brutal.
Well, it just means it's working. Like The comfort is in that you're experiencing these symptoms, but you're not gonna die from it. That's the promise that they gave you.
Hopefully,
So
I
would have
don't get
died if he
why.
had COVID though.
If you die, that'd
Uh,
be a fucking scandal.
yeah,
You don't get what?
why I have to do some more research. I don't get why I'm getting all these symptoms though, because I thought the
It's not
RMRN whatever it was just like it's not the actual virus.
Yeah, it's not the actual virus, but I
your
think
body thinks it is though.
it still triggers all this shit or something like that. I'm
Yeah.
just saying don't worry about it because everybody that got Pfizer, Moderna, and all those ones, they still say like, oh yeah, you're gonna experience symptoms.
Hmm. Well, yeah, everyone has a
And that's
different
normal for
experience.
vaccine in general.
Yeah.
That's in general for vaccines. You're gonna experience them.
Yes.
Symptoms, side effects.
Side effects, but like literally, they said for this one, yeah, you're gonna have symptoms from this one.
Yeah,
From
the
these
second
ones.
one's supposed to be really brutal. Hey, do you guys take your flu shot every year?
Yep,
For a
I
long
do.
time I didn't, but I did start to because I'm
Okay.
getting older.
Do you not?
Nah,
Me?
back then. Oh, yeah. Did
Ah,
Or
you,
Phil.
Phil?
Phil, do you
I
not?
usually not actually.
Yeah, that
Why
was
is
the
that?
same. That was the same with me.
Just because of
Um, I don't know, cause sounds horrible, but it's not very convenient.
No, that was with me
so
as
you're
well.
lazy.
It wasn't
That's
really
good.
convenient, and also the flu is, like it was just so common, and
Mhm.
as that's the way of thinking of my younger self.
Yeah, but after this, I think I should start getting it on the regular.
Yeah,
I do think flu shots is good because if you got a flu shot and you were to get sick, you don't, on average, you don't get as sick, and so it makes sense to even not to like prevent you from getting sick, but like to even reduce the
Hmm.
amount of how long you would get sick. Right. So
yeah, yeah.
there's like
It's
no reason not to get it. I feel other than it's inconvenient. But
yeah,
it,
Yeah, I just never remember when it comes up.
yeah. It just goes by. I mean, like the
I
flu was
guess.
just the flu. It's honestly, it's not terrifying enough. It's not like serious enough, right? Fucking, you get the flu, you get flu, you get calling sick, whatever, right? Fucking win-win. But with
I
this,
do think that
I
the call-in sick thing is gonna be great because people are gonna take sick calls more seriously, and you don't have to feel as bad. You don't have to work during when you're sick. It's a good
Mhm.
change.
I think so too. I think in the workplace now, if like before, if somebody called in sick, you're like, oh, they're not really sick. But now it
Yeah,
just seems like it's very, very serious. Like it's like something people don't
yeah,
joke about anymore. Don't joke about anymore.
yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Because like, or some people will come in even though they're sick, and people are like, "Oh, you came to work," and it's like, "Oh, you should have stayed on." It's like, "No, I still have a lot of work to do," and they're like, "Okay," kind of thing. But now, if you're sick and you went to work, people are like, "What the hell are you doing? You're gonna cause a pandemic. Go home."
the only people
Mhm.
that got like completely fucked from this is right at the beginning of the pandemic getting introduced in North America, where it's like there was no, and like every new case was like a big deal in the news, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
remember that time, like whoever caught it is like front page news, right?
Yeah,
And then they even
definitely.
go into their bios or whatever, some to try to explain like, oh, where they come from, or and like what they like to do, what was their favorite food or whatever the fuck, just because
Do you
that
think?
was a news story. And then the people that got
Mhm.
fucked were the people that wanted to call in sick and play hooky during that time. Right in the beginning was when everybody was the most paranoid and when there wasn't that much fucking cases around. I remember this one girl, it was in the news. She called in sick to her job. I think it was like working at McDonald's or some shit. But then, since it was at that point, it was such a big fucking deal. Her boss like basically called all the authorities and like the fucking CDC and whoever the fuck. So they
What the
came in
fuck?
to investigate it, and basically she was just saying, "Oh shit, like I was lying. I just didn't want to go to
Trying to
work."
play hockey?
Yeah, and then she got fucking slapped with like a fucking court date and everything from that. So like
Oh, that's hilarious.
that was the worst timing is to
That
call
was,
in sick.
yeah. It's funny how the world works, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I like the ones where when lockdowns are like, for Canada, we're experiencing third waves.
Yeah.
And
Forever.
you know,
Yearly waves.
government
Yearly
government
lockdown.
policy and like provincial governments has been doing this yo-yo system with business owners where they open things and shut things down and stuff.
Yeah.
And then business owners starts getting like fed up and it's like holding protests and like I'm not shutting down. And then the news article will say like this restaurant won't shut down, and then the next day this restaurant now shuts down, kind of thing. Like they cave so quickly. It's so funny.
Yeah, and they're literally just screwing them too. Is especially if you like open a restaurant and stuff, you gotta order your inventory, right? So the government's being fucking dumb, which all the pro business governments are like that. They're like, oh, let's open up as soon as we can, and then it gets worse, and oh shit, we gotta shut it down again. Oh fucking like you're a business owner that has to deal with that sort of stuff. Yeah, you do get fucked, and it's literally you're working against your own interest when you say just fucking open up because that's what they've done. They've literally done that like 3 times now, based on the requests of business owners and whoever, right? And and they're the ones that screw themselves the most as well because when they shut down, it's the small businesses that get fucked the most, right? Corporations they don't gotta work, they got a huge buffer of money to fall back on. But you order your inventory and then they shut it down. You just order a whole bunch of waste, right? You're fucked. So like it's just kind of like it was kind of like I felt sorry for them, but at the same time, not all of them, but some of the most vocal ones, the anti-lockdown most vocal ones. I'm kind of like telling my thinking towards them was like, what the fuck, man? You're the one that gets screwed the most if you open up before like prematurely, right? You Mr. Small Business Restaurant owner, you are the one that gets fucked the most if this opening up goes fucked up. Like if it goes tits sideways, why wouldn't you I don't get just take the government should fucking support you off your ass, just up to the tits in support. You obviously deserve that shit, right? But you can't just be like, I want you to open up, and then it goes fucking sideways. It goes into dog shit. Have to close it up again. Oh, you get fucked. You just lost all that inventory. Well, I want you to open it up again so I can make back the money I lost on inventory. Okay, open it up. Same shit happens. You lose even more. This is just a self-defeating spiral.
It's actually because I think in US the nice thing is that they didn't have more than one wave, right? They just had one big tidal wave, whereas in Canada you can see a lot of provincial graphs where you see a small wave in the beginning and then a second big wave, and now the third wave is getting bigger than the second wave or
waves
approaching
upon waves upon waves. I don't know. Some states have gotten waves. I remember New York was one of the big ones, right? Because they had a big wave and then they kind of tapered off, and then they started opening up again, and they fucking had to shut down kind of again. And Cuomo couldn't escape it the subsequent times because also because of his own scandal, but it's also because people were kind of fed up with his shit, right? So I mean, depending on what states you were, you also got waves.
I just hate the issue where the government just blames the citizens. It's like, oh, it's because you guys couldn't keep up the restrictions and you guys were just
that's the fucking worst. Cuomo literally, you can tell you can probably say that guy was responsible for a couple thousand deaths in old folks' homes, right? And the guy is just fucking, it's not my fault, it doesn't matter. And he's still governor. That's the insane part about it. The fucking, the guy that was the communist secretary, party secretary of Wuhan, he didn't even do that. He didn't do that, that type of fuck up. His, at the very least, because his was the first local government that ever saw this coming. He has a legit excuse of saying, "What the fuck is this?" Right? I mean, you could actually give him slack for that excuse, but he still got his ass canned. Him, probably the fucking mayor. They're all gone. They got cleaned out. And this is with the hindsight of this guy, the first guy. He definitely didn't know what the fuck was happening, but it's enough that he like this fucking happened here, and like you're fucking done. You're canned. And someone like Cuomo that literally just is governor over successive waves. Literally, like fucking new, like just put like old people, to sentence them basically just by saying, oh, just keeping these old folks' homes, even though it's spreading like wildfire there. He gets to be governor. He might even run for like before the scandal broke. He was even thinking of running for like 2024 presidential fucking race.
Oh, was he? What do you think about waves? Like, do you like multiple waves of smaller ones, or just one gigantic one?
I don't like any of them. If they did their shit, you just have one wave. That's it. Like all of this,
Yeah,
like
because
multiple
you didn't
waves,
know about it, kind of thing.
multiple waves or one ongoing wave is just literally you fucked up. That's it. It's just two different types of you fucked up.
Like, so I guess I think if you were running policies, you would just say, we will lock down until vaccine is a thing, basically. Like, opening up is only when vaccines will occur, right?
So that's the countries that did that, like the ones that don't have waves, that's what they did. Like, so the virus is just objectively beatable. All you gotta do is starve it.
Which country is fully vaccinated? Like, is there one yet?
No, I know the Western ones are probably on their way to being fully vaccinated because they're putting all their eggs into the basket of vaccination, right?
Like, I was looking at this video about China, and they're building vaccines, but they don't use it on their own people. They're like,
exactly, because they don't have the need, right? Like they had it under control. They have it under control, so there's no like fucking outbreaks there. So they're most like half of the vaccines they're producing is for export. It's to go to other countries, basically, right? And I mean, like, so how many people have been vaccinated in China so far? It's only been like, what? It's not even 100 million people, right? So
yeah, it's very few. But that doesn't make sense to me. Like, I understand, yeah, sure, there's no need, but there's also a need of, hey, let's, like, is society operating normally, or people are okay with operating the new normal, and so they could focus on exporting?
It's more normal. It's not as normal as before, before 2020.
Yeah,
but it is way more normal. It's way more normal, like 100 times more normal than it is like right now, right?
But I still understand, like, why are they focusing on others and not yourselves? Like,
a little bit,
like what every other country is doing. Focus on yourself first.
Yeah, I think it's just that like the vaccines are I feel like because they don't have that fucking that desperation that we gotta get everybody vaccinated now because this is running wild. I feel like that's the thing. Like, and because they don't have that fucking pressure, they can use it to like a diplomatic advantage, right? Because it pays them a really good dividends. It's a really good tool. It's a good move diplomatically to offer countries vaccines and shit. And plus,
if
you
I
are
was a citizen in China, but like, yeah, I understand there's no urgency, but hey, it'd be nice to.
You
not
can.
wear masks.
The thing is, Oh yeah, that's the thing. It's not like it's unavailable. You can. In major cities, you can get it. I showed you that notice from Shanghai a while back, right? And it's like, yeah, you can go get your vaccine. You can go on this. You can go on your phone online and book it or whatever, right? I feel like, and I think the other places, like, you have, especially if you have to go out of the country to go work overseas, like, yeah, you got to get vaccinated and stuff like that.
So then, why aren't people signing up? Or do people in China don't believe in vaccine?
They do believe in vaccines. I think they're just like the government hasn't like I think one of the big differences is like the government hasn't come out with an order. Ironically, they're at a point where like they don't have to emergency produce everything and just like convert everything to produce these vaccines and distribute it as fast as they can, because there's no functional like spread of cases there, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, but it's like I understand it's not spreading, but doesn't mean it can't spread, kind of thing. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it would bite them in the ass if they had a spread right now, And then
Yeah.
like fucking like, oh yeah, you've just been given vaccines to everybody else. But
they're just playing with fire. Is what I'm thinking. It seems dangerous.
I mean, like, I guess so, but just based on what they did, even without
Mhm.
the vaccine, I mean, like, they have that shit on lockdown, and this was already before the vaccine. They already had it under control, right? So whatever they did already worked. So they literally have the leisure to kind of do whatever the fuck they're doing now.
Yeah,
You know?
I don't know. I think in some ways I guess it's an interesting play to use this time to take advantage of your political influence or gain some goodwill or whatever it might be. It just seems like
Well,
a risk
it's
to your citizens.
vaccines itself is like it's transnational first of all, right? Like the virus is
Hmm.
transnational. So like
Hmm.
you're not like, oh, I'm not gonna, if I don't vaccinate my own citizens and vaccinate these other guys, I'm gonna,
Yeah, it's a whole
it'll be
world
good.
thing. It's a global effort.
So
Like
that was
everyone needs
like
a vaccine
that was
for.
one of the big critiques from the World Health Organization with these countries that bought up just all the
Their
Moderna and Pfizer stock. It was be like, you're not gonna do much of a dent because fucking you still have a whole bunch of people out in
Yeah,
these other countries that are sick with this, and
yeah,
fucking new variants are popping up because of this. Like you have to be able to. Everybody needs to get vaccinated for this to be able to have a comprehensive victory, right?
yeah. I think
So I mean,
Melinda
like,
Bill Gates addressed that.
yeah,
Yeah.
so on this end, I'd be like, yeah, if they, like they're exporting vaccines, at maybe half the rate where they're also inoculating their own, like more or less is still fulfilling that purpose of you have to vaccinate everyone. And the leisure is there because their own population
Well,
is under control,
I think we're at this
virus
problem of
wise.
distribution, is what you're saying. Like, what I say. So we have a limited number of vaccine. The idea is we need to vaccinate everyone, like in the world.
Yeah.
How do we do it? Do we like some countries decides like we're gonna take care of ourselves first, and then afterwards, help our
Yeah, and
allies,
that's
kind of
fair
thing.
as well. Yeah, that's obviously if you're a leader of a country,
Hmm.
that first and foremost you gotta take care of your people, and that's
Hmm.
obviously fair, right? I think the
Right.
critique against the countries like Canada and U.S. that bought up literally everything was that
Yes.
like it was to the point where like you have more than your population is needing, like by up to like even 4 times, right?
Hmm.
So like it was just that overriding fear of like not having the supply, like
Hmm.
that was the main driver of their actions.
So do you feel
And
like that was like that whole case of buying up the hand sanitizer thing? It's like the what do you call it?
in a way,
Panic buy?
yeah, but in a way, it wasn't to resell. It was literally just like I want to buy the whole shelf because I need to secure supplies for my whole family, right? Just kind of like overdoing it in a way,
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
like that in a way that was like just, yeah, they're just going overboard with some of that shit,
Yeah.
and you could tell, but the need is there because like you can understand the mentality of them, right? Even though it's not really it's not really the wisest thing to do, but everybody's panic is there because they've lost control of containment of the virus. So this is what they're betting on, right? So that's why they're hoarding the fuck out of everything.
That's the one thing I wish I see more coverage of is how is other countries handling the virus and what is their vaccine strategy is, or are people having taking their vaccine? Like we hear the US and we hear about the Canada and parts of Europe, but like India, Africa, those areas, we don't really hear much stories,
Uh,
or Asia kind of thing.
some of the places that were hit the hardest. Well, actually, Britain is a funny case because Britain was also one of those countries that were hit the hardest by the virus and couldn't contain it. But
Hmm.
their vaccine rollout was probably one of the more better ones.
Yeah.
A lot of it kind of has to do with how their health system is set up, but also with the same panic, like I mentioned, that we have, just because all of the eggs are in the vaccine basket, right? But with
Hmm.
the UK, because their NHS is literally like a government run kind of deal, like when they roll it out, there's not, you don't have to fucking haggle around which clinics, what Shoppers Drug Mart needs to open and whatever, and coordinate all that and the supplies. It's just literally the NHS itself fucking
Hmm.
just distributing vaccines and opening vaccine centers and all that shit, right? So I feel like they could do that well. They had the mechanisms and
Do you think
the
they'll be the first?
organization.
Yeah.
I think they may be one of the first to have like complete 100% vaccinated
because they're
population.
like their size is smaller compared to
Yeah,
like,
that
say,
works for
US.
them as well. Yeah, they're small.
Yeah.
Yes. Geographically, their size is smaller. So like if you think about it, Singapore would be like a country like Singapore would be one of those places that will also get vaccinated fastest, right? Like geography works to your advantage here.
Or
In a way where the virus will run through your fucking small population or through your big population in a small area. The reverse is also true, where not reverse. The same thing is also true with the vaccine. Your vaccine will be distributed much more faster throughout your entire population
I
because of
think
your
Vatican
geography.
City would be the quickest, right? Because they're the smallest country in
This,
the
yeah, stuff like
world.
that. Small, yeah. I don't really count them as a fucking country, even.
What?
You know,
They have their own passport.
They do. They are literally a country, but
Right.
this is a token country.
The only thing they don't have is an Olympic team in the Olympics. But I think if they did, they would always win because they have
It's
God.
just I just view it as a fucking part of. It's de facto a part of Rome. They just
Well,
the Pope itself
think
just
there was
has his own country.
I remember this funny argument because like Vatican City is the least country-like country to be a country,
Yeah,
and then Hong Kong is a very country-like country, but it's not considered a country in some people's eyes.
yeah,
Yeah, I thought
yeah.
that's hilarious.
Exactly.
Anyways, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I guess we'll have to see on the oncoming. I guess everyone's eyes are really on US because I just hear a lot of people are getting vaccinated and people are, having gatherings, which is awesome.
I've noticed the most annoying and fucking frustrating thing has come back from
Which
the
is
Obama years, which is just the media, the
boring
news media
news?
in the US. It's not
Yeah.
boring. It's not just boring news, but it's just like ass kissing news. to
Oh, like the Biden asking
Yeah,
his troops to come
yeah.
back for the 10th
all of
anniversary
it.
of 911.
It's just literally everything they're doing is just perfect in their eyes, and like the one thing
Is it perfect? I mean,
absolutely
Biden's
well,
still
the
getting
media will
hammered by
definitely
the kids,
no, the media
the
like
migrant
the
kids.
kids are that's fucking small. That's small fucking potatoes. And you have the
Okay,
same
fine.
you have the same media apparatuses that are going to bat for him, right? They're
Mhm.
writing opinion articles, trying to defend the administration when it's literally the same thing. The migrant kids are still getting screwed, right?
Yeah.
The same guys that would write, "Oh, Trump is so evil because he's doing this." Biden administration comes on, does the same thing. They're like, "Oh, but you have to give him time. He wants to do this. He wants to do that."
Oh,
it's
you're
stuff
saying,
like that.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's media for you. Like that's
Well,
how I felt about the
remember,
conspiracy.
Trump
They're
was
just
awesome because in that regard, where the media and him every day was eternal struggle. That was the best part. When he shat on the media, that was my favorite part.
I'm sure.
I
Well,
missed that.
now it's the Fox News. Like, who's that guy? Ted Turner? Not Ted Turner. What's his name?
Tucker Carlson.
Tucker. Yeah, Tucker. Yeah, he was just shit on Biden.
Yeah,
the
yeah, it's
Democratic.
back. But it's just Fox. And back then it was much more funner because it's all news except Fox or whatever.
Yeah. Well, do you
It
think
was the inverse.
Biden's only going to run for one term due to his
I don't know.
age?
Maybe
I don't know if he has another.
due to his dementia.
I don't know if he has more time. Like everyone keeps saying Kamala Harris will be the next president, right? Because Biden might croak and then she'll just take it by default.
Yeah, if she's still his running mate in fucking the next one, it's likely that
can it
she'll still
change?
be. Yeah, it can change, but it's
Um,
she'll still be vice president. I feel like. I
Yeah.
don't know. I myself feel like Biden's already fucking out to fucking lunch. So I don't know. They'll probably prop him up for another term because what the fuck?
Yeah,
Like the U.S.
well-
president itself is just it
Well,
is
the
the
whole-
representative of capital as the figurehead.
I think people
Anyways.
remember him because the way he's handling the whole vaccine thing, right? People seems to be positive about it. So the fact that he beat the corona and brought livelihood back to the people are gonna remember him for sure.
I think he's hitting all the right talking points for people right now because he's rolling out that infrastructure kind of deal where, like everybody has always been wanting shit like that. It's
Yeah.
almost like a New Deal sort of program, but not really. It's like a wannabe New Deal. It's nowhere near enough, but at least that gives you the clicks, right? That gives you
Yeah.
like the New York Times readers that read that, they're getting a hard on for that sort
Yeah.
of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I think he's hitting those notes.
Yeah.
I think aesthetically he's pleasing the people that care about the aesthetics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like structurally, materially, there's not that much is really done. Like the most you can say about the infrastructure bill is like, yeah, it's a good start, but I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it's not. They're not even treating it as sort of a start. They're treating it as like the fucking like the end all fight that they need to fucking do to cement their next term as presidents for the Biden presidency, right?
Yeah.
So I you know, like a lot of it I feel is just they just want to hit the right aesthetics as always with the American politics.
Mm-hmm.
As well as they can to secure the second term, right? And to secure and to
What do you think the Republicans are doing? Do you think they have a new robotic Trump on the line, like, or they have a
I
secret plan?
I think they're looking. Because you know what, Trump himself might just run in 2024 anyways. But I feel
Yeah,
like the
as a
Republicans are just
Republican or independent?
probably a Republican. I think the Republicans are kind of running on autopilot right now. Like right now, they do this a lot of times during the first term of a Democratic president, which this is it's just playing resistance, right? It's just playing a more defensive game, playing more resistance. I feel like
Defensive game.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I feel like once they the Republicans are very good at political maneuvering because
Yeah.
they're more of a coherent body, and they when they see weaknesses in the Democrats, they know when to
They
pounce
pounce.
as a coordinated body, right?
Yeah.
And they know when to like kind of lay back and just bide their time
Yeah. Right.
with this. So right now they're biding their time, right? So like this is very
They're
early.
just gonna be like, yeah, let Biden fix the
Yeah,
corona.
they're waiting for the cultivation. They're right now they're playing the culture war bullshit, right? So it's just to
Mhm.
maintain whatever their social and cultural I guess their cultural talking points and support right now. So there's not much moves. You're gonna see that once it's closer to like elections, either midterm, but most importantly the presidential ones. I think you'll start to see much more of a like a push, more aggressive moves.
Well, I have nothing left to add. Should we wrap it up, or do you have any other talking points you want to bring up?
I always got stuff, but I rarely bring them up. I feel like the stuff I bring
Oh,
up will just be never ending. So,
mm,
Phil,
fair
I would look forward to another one of your deep dives where you just talk for 3 hours.
enough.
I think that's what
uh,
the viewers want.
one of these when we have to fill the quota and no one wants to fucking do it, I guess I can do one of those.
What do you think would be your next topic that you would want to do a deep dive on?
I don't know. I was thinking of like wrapping up. I was thinking of doing the part 2 of the initial one where like I would talk about the next period of time after like the Chinese Civil War ended. I don't know, but I don't know if I'd do that as the next one. I will do that one eventually in my life. I feel like I don't know. What do you want?
I haven't thought about it, but I'll think about it and I'll let you know.
Yeah, usually it has to be something that I actually would know something of. So fucking if you're asking me to like fucking talk about like I don't
Espresso
know,
machines?
fucking like yeah
You
yeah
can't do
or
3 hours of espresso machine deep dive?
or the politics of like Angola or some shit. You'll be shit out of luck. I will know dick all about that.
Okay, I'll think about it. I'll let you know.
You can just do it with me too. You can just come on and we can fucking just do it a 2-man one, whatever.
I think it's always good to have a second voice just to know if
Yeah,
someone,
man.
if what you said is
Literally, I
unclear.
did
It's
that
always good
because
to
I
have
just needed to
feedback.
do a filler, right?
I guess, yeah. Corona or COVID is an interesting time where things feel like every day feels like a repeat. So in movies, we're seeing a lot of like these Groundhog Days movies. That's what I noticed as a trend. where like they just keep showing the repeat of the same episode. And I think Groundhog Day, like I talked to my movie friends, and they say like, this theme has existed for a long time.
Yeah.
And then part of me, I think it's also practicality. It's like a really cheap way of making film because you use the same actors, you're using the same location multiple times. So it's an easy, cheap film to make, I think.
I
To the
think people.
Groundhog Day
I
one.
think I think people just like to imagine life as you have a save point to go back to.
Would you want to live life like that? Like to have a save point where you like finally did the right thing and then you save it and then you just keep repeating until you get the result you wanted?
I don't know. I would say that I'd probably say yes for some stuff I really want to fucking try out and shit, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Fucking, you give me the choice. I don't know. I don't know what it's gonna, if I'll regret it or not. No idea.
Hmm.
I cannot say definitively.
If I were to do that, I think the first thing I would do is once I turn 18 is save a point and just keep playing the lottery until I win a lot and then move on.
But what if you can't move on?
Like, what if I never win the lottery? I just keep repeating
No,
it.
what if you can't? You can only repeat it. So
Oh,
that's
that was
like
the
like-
the
thing
worst
in
case scenario.
Groundhog's Day, right?
Yeah,
Groundhog's Day, you're
you can-
repeating it against your will. You just
Yeah,
you're
so you
stuck.
can win the lottery, but you won't live the next day to collect. Isn't that like the
Damn.
worst?
Yeah, that'd be hilarious. Like you forgot how to continue because we repeat it so often that you forgot like, shit, what's the sequence to continue? That would be interesting.
That's-
Never thought about it that way.
It's fucked. It sounds like hell.
Repeat, yeah. To
That
repeat.
sounds like torture.
Yeah. I think that's something about extending our lives. At some point, you have to decide when should I die, kind of thing, right? Because I think we keep in modern science, we keep trying to figure out ways to how to make us live better or live longer. And all these, like when I was looking at vegans, where they talk a lot about health and stuff, and if you eat, more vegetables, you can live longer, and exercise will continue to make you live longer. But at some point in your life, you just need to decide, like, I should just end it because I'm living too long, and it's not as fun.
Yep. But life itself is a unity of opposites. It is already a personification of like a dialectic because you
Mhm.
want to live as long as you don't want to, you want to live as long as you can, but you're gonna die in the end anyways. You're living
Yeah.
life just to die. So that's so people already exist under that. It is already you live as like this contradiction.
I do find that it's interesting, like when you're like, you have old family members in your lives, and you say, "Oh yeah, they'll live for another 10 years and something," and then like they'll seem really healthy, and then in a moment's flash, they will suddenly be like pretty sick, and then just like, oh, they only have a week left, kind of thing. And I think it's
Mhm.
kind of interesting how life can turn on a dime that quickly.
Mhm.
That it's like, yeah, you can forecast that you would live that long, say the next 10 years or 5 years, and suddenly he's like gone the next month, perhaps.
Yep. Yep. And people are afraid of that, and so that's why they have fantasies of living forever.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Well, I think what we're afraid of is like you have all these dreams of to-do lists, right? And when someone tells you like, when you think someone told you like, oh yeah, you have 5 years to do them, and then someone tells you no, you only have 5 months to do them, you're panicking at that point. So I think the solution to that is to have a smaller to-do list. That way you can always finish it.
That's it's just another way of saying this. Live every day as if it's your last. Only have
I was gonna
one
say,
day long chores.
dream small. Don't add too many things to your wish list because
Dude, even
you're
if you
only
had-
gonna be disappointing.
Even if you had zero dreams or zero goals to attain,
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of people would still be afraid of death anyways.
yeah. Do you think it would be less afraid if you knew when you were gonna die? Like if like death came to you and gave you a 2 weeks notice, and you're like, thank you.
Well, so
And
isn't that the
you can
whole
plan
fucking
accordingly.
the 5 stages of grief or acceptance or something. Like at the end, it's just acceptance, right?
Well, that's if you lost something, but if you haven't lost it yet, there's why would
Well,
you
I
go
mean,
through
no,
the five
like even for
stages?
people with
Oh, terminal
like
cancer kind
terminal
of thing.
illnesses, yeah,
But they're not
they
given
reach a
a
point of
precise date. They're given a approximate, like they're given a maximum date. Like the longest you're gonna live is this date,
okay, well,
but you
yeah,
could die
it's
anytime sooner.
approximate, but I still don't a bunch of them go through those kind of stages, and a bunch of them
Maybe, yeah,
can
I
reach a
suppose.
stage of acceptance or something
But
like
I
that.
feel like if you knew the exact date, it might be different. Just because then you don't need to feel that way because you're like, shit, I got 14 days left. I should
Well,
do
I
stuff.
guess the ones that have access to euthanasia,
Right.
that can, that's them.
Yeah, that'd be
Like,
funny. Oh, I guess that'd be interesting.
yeah,
Like if you like
they would know.
you book a day with the doctor to say, hey, you're gonna kill me that
Yeah,
day. Don't be late, kind of thing, and then you go on and plan
yeah.
accordingly. I guess you'll be really pissed if someone like missed a date. They'll be like, oh shit, sorry man, I forgot this was your day and I couldn't make it. You're like, well, you're never gonna see me again. Hope you understand. But
Yeah, man, that's fucking morbid. What the fuck's wrong with you, man?
What a way
Yeah,
to end the podcast, guys.
Jesus Christ.
well, I'm just saying for the people who are late or don't show up for their appointment.
Okay,
You
yeah,
never
okay.
know.
I feel like you could have said if you want to just gripe at people that didn't show up to appointments. I feel like you could have gone in a whole different way. What the fuck? Oh my god.
Gotta put it in perspective for them. Gotta sell that propaganda like these vegans are trying to that eating meat is wrong.
You know what I think would be healthy for everybody is just for everybody just realize that everything's propaganda. Like everything's propaganda. When you're born as a kid, the shit your parents told you, propaganda. All of it. Just realize that. I think everybody would be much more at peace with the world. You know?
Yeah. I mean, even in that Seaspiracy, they had a line where he's like, oh, I'm sick of these feel good companies. They're just trying to make a buck kind of thing. And that's exactly what he's doing.
Yeah,
You asshole.
I'm doing the same thing. Everybody does the same thing. As soon as we open our mouths, we do propaganda.
Yeah. I was kind of actually I just
Whether
wanted
it's
to
telling your
mention
friends that that you do have a big dick, or you have fucked before, yeah, it's all propaganda. That's propaganda.
I was watching another vegan documentary after Seaspiracy called Game Changer. That one people seem to really like about. And it's a little bit more better constructed. In a sense, it's not as propaganda as Seaspiracy, where they use fear mongering as a method.
Yeah.
What they do is they talk about all the benefits of being a plant-based eater, and they
Uh-huh.
they focus on certain vegan athletes and their success and stories and all that stuff. And they talk about like the improvement of plant-based, which is kind of like the positive note. There are some they still use some of the same tactics about eating meat is wrong or how they don't really use hard scientific facts kind of thing.
Yeah.
One experiment they did that seems to caught a lot of people's attention was the erection
The
thing
erection.
where they had these athletes who ate um, a meat based meal and then they measured their erection overnight and then they compared it to when they eat just plants kind of thing and measured their erection and they found that like you would like because when you're for males who sleep at night they have erections throughout the night and they measure like the number of times they have erection and how hard that erection was and they found that plant-based eaters or what they found that when they eat that plant-based meal that night they happen to have harder erections and longer erections.
How could they test how hard it is? They gotta get some guy.
There's this like ring that you put around your penis, and then when it grows, it will detect it. And then I think, in terms of hardness, I guess the ring would, I guess your penis would be either expanding or something about maybe it compresses to measure the hardness. I don't know. There's a device that measures that.
Oh fuck! You gotta wear like a dick ring for the
So
entire
I guess
experiment.
I think it's just this is like sales, right? Obviously, they're trying to say, hey, if you eat more vegetables, you get more harder direction, right? Because
Yeah.
that's what sex is for. It's all for sales,
Yeah.
right? When anytime they talk about sex, it's always a sales thing.
Of
They're
course.
trying to sell you something. So,
What's it called?
game changer.
Game
The other
changer.
thing that they showed that I thought was misleading was if you're a vegan and you eat only vegetables, you will get all the massive benefits. The thing I
Yeah.
think they don't mention is even in vegan, there are vegan junk food. So what I mean to say is things like Impossible Burgers or fake meat are not
It's not that good for your
healthy
health.
food.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we talked about this with fast food restaurants. Like if you look at the nutrition value, it has more salt and more things. So they're showing all these NFL football players eating vegan, but they're eating all these like vegan burgers and vegan chicken and stuff, or fried chicken. I'm like, you're giving people the impression that if I ate this food, I'd be healthy, but it's not. It's still you should eat your green leafy greens and your drink water and your celery sticks. That will make you healthy, right? It's not the vegan meat. So that was something I had a gripe about because they didn't say these food are healthy, but they keep implying that just because as long as you eat plants, you're good, kind of thing. And I think that's wrong.
Do something about it.
Well, I was thinking like, I'll do the whole what's that one in McDonald's where it's like double size me? I'll just do a documentary like that. Like, I became vegan. I eat potato chips every day.
Super
And
size me.
and then like see my
And
health
then you
deteriorate.
died.
And then I show them like how bad veganism is. And it's
Oh,
like
I shit myself
it's
every
just-
day now. I'm so vegan.
Exactly. It's like he's like, I don't understand what's wrong. I eat Impossible meat. I'm eating potato chips every day.
Get a heart attack every time you go down the stairs. It's, veganism did this to me.
Yeah, exactly. I will die and then I'll make a lot of money selling my documentary. and then the meat industry will pay me, like they will sponsor me, like I'm Jerry or something, and say how great eating meat is.
And then you get caught for pedophilia, just like Jared.
It's like, I think that's just a rich people thing.
That's a rich people.
I don't
Well, yeah, and you know what? I think it is kind of rich people thing. If Epstein
caught.
told us anything.
Yeah.
Anyways, anybody else? Is Phil still alive? Did you want to have your last word?
Yeah. Did you want to talk about espressos or anything? Or
Nope,
No one
I am
wants to talk
good.
about espressos. All right, Phil. I hope you feel better. I hope that this is a victory for the vaxxers and you don't die, and it becomes
hope
a
so,
victory
too.
for anti-vax.
Well, this is only half of it, right? You still have one more to go.
The other one
Yeah, and everyone says the second one's the worst.
destroys you.
Well, I heard if you feel like the first one's worse, the second one should be nothing. Because
Probably.
the idea is that you may have already contacted the virus, and that's why your first shot is like the second run, in a sense.
You may have already contacted the virus.
No, like that's for people who get sick for the first one, it's probably because they may have had an encounter of the virus already, and the first one is like their booster already.
I don't
that-
know.
That's what the science was saying.
We'll have to see. We'll have to see what's happening.
Yeah. Well,
Get the scientist on here on next episode. Get the only vaccine scientist in existence to come here and explain. Mic drop on you or me.
Well, I heard
depending on how
Johnson
it
Johnson
goes.
is coming for us, so
Johnson & Johnson's coming for us.
for
J&J.
Canada, the vaccine.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Trudeau was mentioning. He
Whatever,
acquired some
man.
J&J.
We get the rejected
AstraZeneca?
like AstraZeneca ones anyways. So.
No, I think Johnson Johnson are pretty reject, right? Because
All right, they're both pretty reject.
They were given some blood clots and stuff. So
yeah, so we get those. We get the army surplus vaccines.
mm-hmm,
So you guys gonna get vaccinated if you had the opportunity to right now?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Get it over with. Why not?
Yeah.
Right.
Then me and Zinzin can start recording in person because we'd be vaccinated and we'd be following CDC's health guides.
Yeah.
So if you're vaccinated, are the restrictions are lifted?
No, you still gotta follow.
No. I think you think you can follow. You still have to follow them, but for gatherings, I think you're allowed to gather with people who are vaccinated. I think that's okay.
I have no idea. Yeah, I don't know.
Isn't that what the CDC
Might as well
said?
get it. I don't know.
Hmm.
CDC is not us. We don't have to listen to those
Yeah,
fucking.
CDC is down here.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for
We don't
Americans.
gotta listen to those fucking morons. Just like the Americans don't have to listen to our morons.
Well, CDC told me to wash my hands, and that's how I fight the virus.
Oh yeah. Well, this was your mistake.
Yeah, I
You
shouldn't wash my.
put your you put yourself into more danger by listening to them.
But it's
No.
Fauci, man. Fauci.
Yeah.
is
Okay. Yeah.
reputable.
No. If any, for liability reasons, yes. Listen to health people. Don't listen to me.
All right,
Don't listen to crackpots. Don't listen to any of us. Brian is not a health professional. I'm not a health professional. Phil is almost dying from a vaccine, so don't listen to us.
They're gonna think I'm an anti-vaxxer.
You switch sides. You become an anti-vaxxer after this.
Well, actually, I can't because I took the vaccine, right?
Vichy France. Yeah, no, you could be one of. You could just be like the Candace Owens of vaccines. Yeah, you know, like I used to be for the vaccines, and I realized how much of a scam they were. So now I'm against them.
Mm. Yeah,
Okay.
because it's clearly killing me.
That's true.
It's clearly.
I mean, the medicine shouldn't be worse than the. What was it? What did Trump say? The medicine should be worse than the problem.
The cure.
The cure.
The cure can't be worse than the sickness or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right. Let's end
Great,
this.
great
All right,
takes.
guys.
All right. Yes. Like, comment, subscribe. Comment on Twitter. Comment on the YouTube videos. Other than that, just straight up email Jason if you have complaints.
Mm.
Show up to his house if you have his address. Yes, we'll
There was a
catch you guys.
35% chance he was not showing up.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, we're at that level.
yeah, he had to take a massive shit, so that's why he's not here. Yes. So good night, everybody. See you next time.
Night.
Bye.